Good evening, Canby. We have the Budget Committee meeting. It is 5/22/2025. I'd like to call to order the City of Canby Budget Committee meeting. And this meeting was carried over from May 15th, 2025. Let's start with roll call. Maybe over here, go around and then.
Canby Budget Committee.
David Tate, Canby Budget Committee.
Dan Stern, City Councilor.
Tracy Hensley, City Council President.
Kim Wigan, Budget Committee Chairperson.
Brian Hudson, Mayor.
Jim Davis, City Council.
Paul Waterman, City Council.
Jason Padden, City Council.
Eileen Stein, City Administrator.
Scott Schlag, Finance Director.
Katie Joyner, Financial Analyst.
Eric Lightson, Canby Swim Center.
George Stroh, Police Chief.
Tom Martin, Planning Director.
Monica Stone, Public Works. Marissa Yu, Library Director. Jamie Stickle, Director of Economic Development and Communication Specialist.
Todd Wood, Transit Fleet 19.
Yeah, you could.
Maya Benham, Administrative Director and City Recorder.
Just like this.
Ryan Potter, Planning Manager.
Jessica Roberts, Supervisor.
Spencer Pollock, Public Works.
Adam Hunter, Economic Development.
Teresa Ridgely, Deputy City Recorder.
Chair, question.
Yes.
I just want to confirm, we do have 2 vacated seats and a couple of absent folks. Do we have a quorum, Teresa, Maya? We're 7 of 12. Does that constitute a quorum for the Budget Committee? It's barely a majority. I just want to make sure we can do business. We're missing Sean Varwig, Herman Maldonado, and then there's 2 vacated seats because Chapin resigned and there was a vacant seat. I just want to be clear that we're good.
Yeah.
You're good?
Is Mr. Maldonado gonna be on Zoom?
He is not able to. He's got to take care of some tasks that he didn't get to take care of because we were here so late last night.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
We have 7 of 12.
8.
8. What? You don't count him.
I didn't count myself.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, I guess, okay.
7 of 12. I just want to make sure that that constitutes a quorum.
I have none.
How is there, if I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there's 8.
8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I forgot to count the chair. My bad.
Thank you.
Sorry, Kim. Love you.
Love you too.
I forgot to count you.
Okay,
All right, so this group.
so
We're
we
good to
have a
go.
quorum? Okay,
We're good to go. Okay, just
All
wanted to
right.
make sure.
all right, so
We're being watched closely, so I wanted to make certain.
members of our audience, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Teresa Hurley, I'm with the Canby Library Foundation, board member. I'm Tiffany Mack, I'm with the Friends of the Library, and I'm on the Library Advisory Board. I'm Jennifer Thomas, I'm on the Friends of the Library Board.
Kathy Mulligan, I'm the Friends of the Library Board. Mike Stone, just interested party.
All right, we thank you for being here. All right, we have no old business, and before we get into the new business, we received an email today from a Christy Smith. She is on the Canby Library Advisory Board, so I'm going to read this. My name is Christy Smith, and I serve on the Canby Library Advisory Board, but I am also a proud library patron. As you consider potential budget cuts, I urge you to move beyond the surface level appeal of equal reductions across departments. Equal cuts are not equitable cuts. The library serves thousands of residents annually, many of whom rely on it not as a luxury, but as a necessity for internet access, safe gathering spaces, job resources, literacy programs, youth engagement, and more. I also want to speak directly to the issue of staffing. Losing even a single library employee is not just an internal shift, it's a direct blow to the community. Losing staff would without a doubt mean cutting hours, services, etc. The impact ripples beyond city operations. Our library is already stretched thin, and each staff member wears multiple hats to keep services running. These are not just positions, they are people who have built trust with families and know our patrons by name, and who serve as a connection point for those who may have nowhere else to go. They are also valued community members with families and whose livelihood hangs in the balance of budget decisions. These are difficult decisions, and I understand the pressure you face. But when we talk about shared sacrifice, we must also talk about shared impact. Cuts to departments like the library do not land evenly. They land hardest on the people already carrying the heaviest burdens. I urge you to reconsider any proposed reductions to the library budget and instead view our library as what it truly is, a cornerstone of equity, education, and community resilience. Thank you for your time. Christy Smith. All right, we thank you for that. And now we are on to new business, and we will not be going over the funds as presented in the agenda. Eileen, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you.
So this is primarily for the Budget Committee. Obviously, the City Council was at the meeting last night, but we did ask the council to decide the amount of capital reserve. And so the council decided to stay with the 20% capital reserve. So that resulted in us preparing additional reductions in the budget. And that's why you have a draft 2 budget for your consideration tonight. So I just wanted to make that clear that the council did make that decision. In terms of how we tackle these funds, I'd like to finish the work that we did last week in terms of presenting the non-general funds and then getting into the general fund after that, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, that sounds
Great.
great.
So with that, I want to start with the Facilities Fund, and I think Spencer is going to present that. We made a slight change in the Facilities Fund, which affects all of the funds to one degree or another. And I wanted him to explain that and also just go through the Facilities Fund.
Good evening. The main change that we did to the facilities fund is we removed $42,000 for capital projects. Those projects were painting weathered areas here at the Civic Center, as well as replacing the weathered awnings around the building, and then shampooing of the carpets and upholstery here inside the building. By removing those capital projects, lowered the overhead for all of the funds, kind of reducing the requirements of all the general fund budgets going forward. So that was kind of the main change. Other than that, materials and services, there's just some slight increases due to inflation for some of our contracts going up, or how much supplies and utilities are going up. So that's kind of the rough basic of it. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Councilor Patton.
One real quick, I noticed in the goals here, it says hire in-house custodial services. Are you moving away from a contract, the contract services, or looking to bring someone in-house?
That was probably a mistake on our part. There was something that we had originally discussed with kind of the leadership team and the administrator when we first did this highlights draft and stuff, but it was kind of elected not to try to bring on more staff. So
Okay.
we're continuing with the contract services.
Okay, I will just point one out. I'm really quite excited because with my dyslexia, oftentimes I don't find these things, but it says spot paint in severed weather. If you do keep that, you might want to put severe.
Okay.
That's all.
Yes.
I know, right? I'm like, whoa, is that really a thing? That's awesome. Okay. It's the simple things in life for me sometimes.
Any other questions, discussion? Looks okay?
Okay, I just have a question.
Yes. Counselor Stearns.
All right, I like questions. So by postponing I guess, some of this maintenance that's going to happen, and postpone it, is that going to materially affect the useful life of the building and the carpet by postponing it, or is just something we'll just pick up next year, or if it's needed?
It's kind of a hard question to answer as far as,
Sorry for the hard.
no, it's fine.
Don't spill your coffee, people.
Yeah, as long as people aren't spilling and rough on the carpets and everything for another year, we should be able to, but yes, it's gonna be similar to changing the oil on your vehicle, you know. If the recommended is every 3,000 and you push it to 4,000 or 5,000, it does have an effect on the overall life.
How often do we normally get carpets cleaned?
About once a year.
Anything else? Counselor Waterman, did you have a question? Or no? No? All right, are we good with this one?
Okay,
Yes?
next up.
Thank you.
Number 7 in the library. And the library budget begins on page 79.
All right, hello, everybody. My name is Marissa Ely. If you didn't already know, I'm the library director. I just wanted to start by saying thank you very much for donating your time to this community. It's a really big deal, and I just think it's really important to say that. So thank you for donating your time to this community. So some of our 2024-2025 highlights so far, we received several grants and donations from Canby Kiwanis and the Friends of the Canby Public Library. We created a new strategic plan that's going to run through 2027. And we also got the library included in one of the council goals, which is to develop a plan to fund current and expanded library services. Some of our upcoming goals for the next fiscal year is to continue addressing those strategic plan priorities, to continue building our Canby Maker Lab, which is a place where community members of all ages can learn STEAM skills and concepts. And our plan is also to unveil our brand-new Canby Career Center in the library, which is 100% funded by grant dollars, which will provide a dedicated area for job seekers to learn new skills like interviewing, resume building, and financial literacy. So as for the numbers, I was asked to prepare a budget with a $20,000 reduction from our transfer from the general fund. And so those reductions are now in your budget book, and those are going to be coming from 4 different lines. The first is our on-call budget, reducing that by about $15,000, making it $39,000, reducing travel and training by a little bit, but we do need a lot of those training funds for safety reasons. Reducing our library collection and also reducing our volunteer budget line, which is to use for recognition and supplies for them to do free work for the library. So as a result of this reduction, the library is going to have a couple different things happen. One is reduced open hours, which means reduced programs, events, meeting room open hours, and career center hours. Any reduction of hours puts us at the bottom of open hours for link libraries and below the OLA or Oregon Library Association standards for our service area population size. This is a big deal. We're also going to be reducing our collection budget, which includes our Library of Things collection, which are things that people can check out without having to pay for on their own. Seed library, despite having huge increases in checkouts, it means we're going to be going from 2 reference desk staff at a time to 1 during certain hours of the day, despite huge increases in questions and requests. We've more than doubled each month what we normally get asked to do. So this community really needs the library. There's going to be longer wait times for check-in, shelving, and holds. We're going to have to reduce programming due to reduced staffing and events despite huge increases in participation in those programs. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we are going to have reduced partnerships and the ability to fill holes in other organizations' services and offerings, especially the Canby School District with their budget cuts. We supplement the school library collections, and we were also hoping this coming year to help with the school district getting rid of their study labs and tutoring in the new school year, which we will now not be able to do. These cuts will affect the community in big ways due to all the services and resources that we provide as a library, and every single expense that we have is to provide resources and services to our community members, but especially those that need it most. So even though we are making these reductions, I will do whatever is the will of the Budget Committee and the Council. So if you have any questions about our reductions or budget in general, I'd be happy to answer those.
So all those reductions that you talked about in services, was that a result of just the $20,000? So basically, the restoration of $20,000 would eliminate all those hour reductions?
We might still have to make some cuts just because of increases in prices, but in my library funding presentation that I did last month on the 16th of April, I attempted to make it known that really any cuts would kind of cause this kind of effect. And that really just comes down to the fact that we're already spread really thin as a staff. I don't just have my staff doing library page duties. They're doing several different position duties as long as it's not out of class. We're already spread very, very thin. And so I was trying to get across that any cut would basically affect all of our operations since we're already really hurting.
Okay, no, it sounds like there's that $20,000 is with a lot of services.
It is, and partially the reduction in hours comes from having to reduce our on-call budget, but we have to try to right-size our hours, so we're only open 7 to 8 hours a day. That way my staff, which there's only 9 of us, including me, and we're not all part-time, that way staff can come in and be here right before the library opens and come in and be here until the library closes. Right now, we're open more hours, so I have to have staff at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, in addition to the middle.
Okay. No, I appreciate answering the questions. And so, but it does sound that $20,000, which is a very small portion of the overall budget, could make a big difference in the library.
Yeah, and again, the library's general fund transfer to the library, the general fund transfer to the library. It is currently this fiscal year $325,000. It's going to $305,000. That's my portion of the general fund. It's very small, but any impact is big when you already don't have enough funding to cover your operational expenses. And again, our library district funds pay for a majority of our operational expenses, but they were never meant to cover all of our operational expenses, and they don't, and they won't, at least the way that it is right now with the permanent tax rate.
Okay, well, it sounds like a $20,000 investment would go a long way. And I know in the past, when we're doing budget committee meetings, had like
The bubble list.
the bubble list
I got it right here.
to discuss afterwards, obviously. And I would propose that maybe be put on the bubble list, because it sounds like there's a lot of benefit for a relatively small percentage of the budget on there. So, and the other thing is, there was to kind of respond to Christie's email, or was it a letter?
Yes.
A letter, and then there were some other ones that I think we received that seemed to indicate that we were cutting the library budget, but it looks like the library budget has increased by about $150,000 between the current budget and the proposed budget. So I don't know if I'm misreading it, or if there's a rumor out there that library is being cut, when it looks like the amount in the 25 budget was $2,294,119, and then it's an increase of $2,462,900. I mean, increase to, not increase up. 2 million.
Because she wishes she had an
460,000. So it looks like, I mean, I just wanted to address that. There may be, unless I'm totally misreading the situation, it doesn't look like there's a budget cut between last year and this year. I understand that costs go up and everything else too, so I'm not ignorant of that, but I just wanted to point out it doesn't look like there's a cut being proposed at this time. And I kind of responded to some people with that email that didn't look at it as a budget cut, but if
would
I'm
just-
wrong, I'd be corrected.
I would just say to pay attention to the expenditures, that's where the cuts are coming from. Every year we get a little bit more money from the tax district, but again, it does not keep up with inflation and everything
Yeah, no, I
else.
understand, but I'm saying, but as a dollar amount, there is not less this year than there was, I mean, the proposed doesn't have less money than the current.
That could also be the result of the personnel budget as well. So I didn't cover it completely last week, but we've got medical costs increasing and primarily PERS increasing, so.
Well, my question is there a, well, obviously, if there's a cut, we're going to say there's a cut, and if there's not, we should say there's not. But I'm looking at the budget, and the number I see for the proposed budget is higher than the number for last year. I just want to just clarify that, or unless I'm misreading something, and maybe I am.
So what it is there's, so really quickly, just to clarify something before I stick my foot in my mouth. Up at the top here, it says transfer from general fund. In this copy I have, it says $325,000. That should actually be $305,000. Okay, let me change that, 305. So, Counselor Stearns, I think what is good to key in on is that regular salaries and wages are essentially increasing by almost $100,000 in the requirements for library. The insurance benefits are up to almost $60,000. The PERS contributions are up almost 30, and internal charge tech services are also up almost 30. So essentially, those increases more than cancel out any increase in the tax increment. And
Well,
then,
I'm not making a comment on the amount of service provided, I'm just
No,
saying.
I'm just saying,
As an absolute
yes.
number, the budget isn't being cut, and if there's rumors or people are getting the impression things are cut, and you're correct that things are, services are being cut, then we have to define what a cut is, because if an increase in budget is a cut, then we have to say what isn't a cut before we can determine what is and what isn't a cut. I'm not trying to make a judgment.
No,
on
I
whether it's
understand.
sufficient or not sufficient. In fact, I proposed the $20,000 be added
Yeah.
back in. But the,
It's on the bubble.
or in the budget, or on the bubble,
I
whatever.
put it on the bubble list for later.
But I'm just wondering to make sure that communication out there has definitions that sort of matter. Yeah, Paul. Or,
Yes.
That's one way to look.
Mr. Tate.
I would also say that you could make the argument that the City of Canby is cutting its budget because we are decreasing the amount of money from the general fund compared to what we gave them last year. So it may not be an
Your mic.
overall.
Sir.
the microphone.
Thank you.
So it may not be an overall budget cut, but the support coming from the city through the general fund has been cut.
that's fair.
And yes, Counselor.
I guess, I don't know if this question's for Eileen or for Scott. The new revised version we just got shows the cuts in her expenditures, but not the reduction and transfer from general fund. It still shows 325. But it's actually going to be 305?
Yeah,
I just
so
mentioned that.
if we hold
So
true
the
to
math
that,
isn't going to math here.
if we hold true to that, it'll be 305. It's a reduction to 805 for the total transfer in and other sourcing. And the total library resources would equal 2,442,934.
Okay, I'm just wondering why we weren't presented with the budget with the actual numbers that it would be. 2 million, what was that?
2,442,934.
442, 934. I mean, if we're proposing to cut the general fund contribution, it should have been reflected in the new budget book, but, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I guess it's on the bubble, so we will come back to that. Visit it. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Counselor Waterman.
This is my first time in this meeting. What does that mean on the bubble?
Traditionally, we've had a bubble, what we call a bubble
Working
list,
line.
is things we're going to revisit.
Okay, so we're not making a decision here, this is gonna get revisited?
Well, we talk,
Yes.
yes, this will
Discuss
come back up for discussion after we hear other funds.
Okay, tonight. Okay,
Usually at the end of the budget.
Sometimes tonight, could be next week.
next week, but, okay,
Yeah, before we're done, yes.
Yes.
thanks.
All right, so that library is on the bubble.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay. Thank you. Okay, next fund is Transient Room Fund. Jamie?
Good evening, Jamie Stickle, I'm the Economic Development Director and Communications Specialist. And also out of our department, we oversee the Transient Room Tax Fund, which is better known as tourism. And so as you'll see that there are two different pieces to the tourism budget. One of those is tourism promotion, the second is tourism enhancement. Those are utilized in different ways, and the breakdown of the two is dictated by the state. So you can have 70% of your funds go into tourism promotion, and then tourism enhancement, at least 30%. So for this year's budget, we hope to continue our cooperative marketing with regional tourism partners, which includes Mount Hood Territories, that's the Clackamas County's tourism entity, and Travel Oregon, as well as our work with Active Media, who they have the Canby magazine, but they also have magazines and different productions throughout the state. We're hoping to revamp our newcomers and visitors guide with a potential kind of interactive map that would be connected to the Visit Canby kiosks in Waite Park, fairgrounds, and then with our ongoing partnership with Canby Area Transit, because they go outside of town, and frankly, as people drive through Canby, if they're behind the bus or next to the bus, they're seeing our marketing. And then some ongoing video promotion and online marketing, and that is with some input from local businesses. One of the things that I'll be talking about when I come up to present on economic development is that over the course of the last year, we've had two different meetings where we've brought our local businesses, more specifically this last time, downtown businesses together to see, to share what we have going on, see what their input is. And we got some really, I think, very interesting input about how to promote and market, not just Canby events, but also Canby businesses. And so we're going to be working on kind of implementing some of that and having some ongoing meetings with those local businesses. That meeting was just on Monday morning at Bee's Bake Shop. So we hope to then continue that marketing in a way that reflects the input that we heard. And then as far as tourism enhancement goes, this has been typically used for some tangible items, police barricades, the hotel study. So this year, there's a little bit of money for that, but it also includes funding for, essentially it's called a room night generators assessment. This is based off of some of the work that we've done around hotel incentives. And in working with developers, they have said, yes, the hotel study says there's a need, but how do we show exactly what those, they call them room night generators, the need, whether that's corporate through the industrial park, local tournaments, local events, or just people coming through who don't necessarily want, the in-laws staying in their spare bedroom. Wouldn't be me, but other people. And then one piece that I also wanted to note, and it is not reflective in this budget, but during the city council work session regarding hotel incentives, there was interest in potentially having some design assistance and renderings to market hotel sites in Canby. And essentially, we just received the information later than we had submitted this work. The Public Works Director connected me with Harper, Huff, Peterson, and Regelis, who's done some work. They're an engineering firm. They've done some work for us. They're currently helping us with the path over by the logging bridge. And, they said that they are interested, but that this isn't something that they would typically do, and actually said it would be more fit for an architectural firm. And and recommended Scott Edwards Architecture, who is someone who has done lots of work, including the path over at the logging bridge. And so I was able to connect with Sarah at Scott Edwards Architecture, and as I noted, the cost estimate came in after this was submitted, but it was a not-to-exceed price of $25,000. And this helps to not just do a marketing piece, which seems like the fluffy, but also identify where the utilities are, how parking could be laid out. It would be somewhat generic so that, you know, whether it's the Hilton brand or another brand, they could start to envision their hotel in that area and understand the intricacies that are associated with utilities. So I wanted to note that, and, you know, if we would like to amend the budget, it could go on the bubble or up for discussion.
So,
Yes, Counselor Davis.
Jamie, it's not in here yet then?
It is not. It would be part of the tourism enhancement line item.
I'd like to add that to the parking lot or the bubble, whatever you want to call it.
We want that on the bubble?
To the bubble.
Okay. Is this a general fund item?
It is not.
No. I didn't think so. Okay.
That was the other piece that I was it's in my notes, but that I was gonna note is that this is not a general fund item, so the inclusion of that would not affect any of the work that we've done around cuts with the general fund.
Right, as was noted in both pages, the new version and the old version are the same page. That's why I figured, oh, it's because it's not general fund. But we still want it on the bubble, given it's not general fund? Counselor Davis?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
It's not in
Counselor.
the general, and it's not affecting anything else, can't we just take care of it right now? Why do we need to postpone it? It doesn't impact anything else. Let's just do it.
I don't get a vote, but I support that idea.
Sounds good to me.
You need a motion.
Counselor Davis, since you wanted it on the bubble,
I'm fine with it.
and Counselor Patton.
Yeah, so remind me again which pot of money this would come from?
It's the transient room tax, so it's for overnight stays, whether that is at the Motel 6 or overnight stays not including camping at the fairgrounds.
Okay, so I guess, because it shows here that the total transient room tax resources would be $189,756. And then you go down to the bottom and it says the total requirements would be the same amount. So this would be this should be $25,000 in addition to what is already up here, correct?
Or does it come out of the reserved?
Comes out of reserve.
Comes out of reserve.
Yeah, okay.
So the reserve is what we're trying to protect, or?
No,
Different reserve.
This is reserved specifically for this fund, it's not a general fund.
Okay, I get it.
General fund, everything else.
And
This
some of,
budget has a $20,000 increase in reserves.
Okay, got it.
That's not getting us any new bodies of it.
and I was going to note that one of the reason also for building that up is that the city administrator and I have talked about when the right hotel developer comes to Canby and is ready, that there might be, you know, a consideration at the city council level of if there's funding to help through permitting or those kinds of things. We've discussed that, but that's part of the reason that that's there.
Okay,
Not
yes.
on the bubble or on the bubble?
Mr. Pendleton.
I have one just general question of why we're spending money to attract a hotel when we already have a hotel.
That's a great question. There has been, the city has identified through a hotel study that there is a need for a hotel. So the Motel 6, while a hotel, for instance, some of the industrial park businesses are more likely to send someone to Wilsonville or Oregon City. Portland is also not that far away. And so by being able to keep that money here, it helps to support our local businesses. And, you know, just as we talk about budget constraints here, we find ourselves in a time where our local businesses need all the support that we can get. So
it is one of those things where I think it's great to have options. You know, some people want to stay at a Motel 6. It's tried and true. They know they can spend, you know, a decent amount and get a bed, and that's all that they need. But if there's the need for more, whether that's through a corporate stay or even more rooms than the Motel 6 is able to accommodate, for instance, if a tournament is in town, having more opportunities to stay is helpful.
Any more discussion?
Well, I guess to go
We
back
need
to
to-
Mr. Tate's comment about, I mean, is this do we need to allocate those funds now, or is it just more of the funds are there, do the project?
I'm hearing interest in adding 25,000 to the,
Sorry, I didn't get it.
thank you. I'm hearing interest in adding 25,000 to this budget, and the reduction would come from the beginning cash balance, so.
To balance it, you would be seeing the reserve for future expenditures decrease.
Okay.
Okay. So yes, Counselor Patton.
One last thing, for this 25K, was this something that recently came up, and that's why it's not part of this?
Yeah, so the city council, we reviewed the incentives, I think, in late May, and so late March, it's not even late May yet. And then I received the full scope of work and the proposal not to exceed price in late April, I think. So it was after we had already submitted our budgets.
Okay, I move to create a line at $25,000 for an architectural work for envisioning a hotel in Canby.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to add $25,000.
Is it moving them moving the 25K from the tourism enhancement to a line item, or are we adding from somewhere? I want to be clear on that before I vote.
Are you going 35,000?
Yes.
It's because you're adding 25, so, yeah, so 35,000.
Because I think I heard you say it was in the tourism
Coming from
enhancement
the
reserve. For 40, it's 44,360, it's not coming out of that?
Oh, sorry. That's where it would be coming from, correct? The reserve?
Enhancement?
Yep.
It's used to enhance or promote. Which one?
So enhancement.
Yeah, so then I
Okay.
would, 25,000 up
So
from
we're just
that.
merely moving it and giving it its own line item. We're not moving any money into the fund.
Correct. We're not moving any money into the fund.
Correct, okay. That's what I was.
No.
No.
So if we're showing,
When they said add 25K, that's what made me go, wait,
Yes,
what?
and I just, as far as how to verbalize how it's moving, that's why I'm looking to Scott, just to make sure that
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, Counselor Patton.
I amend my motion to say, to specify, like specifically allocating the $25,000 out of the reserve for tourism enhancement line.
Okay,
For
there has
clarification.
been a motion to remove $25,000 from the reserve for tourism enhancement and give it its own line item by Counselor Patton, seconded by Counselor Davis. All those in favor? Thank you. Oh, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right.
I have just one quick observation to make. Just the transient room fund, as my understanding, is a restricted fund, and none of that money can be used by law for anything other than promoting tourism. Is that correct?
Correct.
part of it is for promotion, and then the part of it is for enhancement,
Yeah,
which is,
yeah.
but yes.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that it's not money that can be used.
We can't give.
Yeah, it can't be
20K to
used for
library.
parks or streets or, you know, yes, exactly.
Okay, just sometimes people get confused about that, so what are we doing with all this
Yeah,
money?
we can't use it to fill a pothole
That
on
was a
Highway
good
99.
thing to point out, though, that 25 couldn't have gone to the library, you're right.
Thank you all.
So you took.
Thank you.
I'm trying.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
In fact, I didn't actually.
next fund is System Development Charges Fund. Dawn? That fund begins on page 89.
Good evening, Budget Committee. I just wanted to go through this, and if you've got questions, I'm glad to respond to those. On the good side of the news, there are a number of projects that are in pipeline right now. There's development projects, so the actual system development charge collection for the current fiscal year is actually less than we're projecting for next fiscal year. There's a number of industrial projects and a number of multifamily projects that are in pipeline, and we're anticipating those to occur. There's also single-family residential system development charges, and we've looked at the rates for those as well, looking at how many residential units would be built per year. We've looked at 50 single-family dwellings, which is low, and 90, which is about what we had last year, to look at the projections here. So on the system development charge side of things, it looks good. This does not include, this will be later in my presentation, the increase in system development charges that we're currently working on that should be adopted by December of this year, which will include parks, streets, sewer, and storm. So that would increase this number likely increase this number as well. This is the current calculation. We don't know by how much because those factors have not been done yet. Recently had a meeting on Parks Advisory Committee this last week, and just for an example, it looks like maybe the parks system development charges for residential may be as much as double. That's a decision council ultimately will need to make, and there'll be more discussion on June 4th and work session for council. I don't know if you have questions around this. I can get into more detail. But it's on the uptick. That's the one positive thing on looking at things, and that's because these projects, sometimes it takes a couple years for a project to come to fruition. And these projects started, most of them started within the last 2 years, and now they're ready for construction. So I think that looks a bit more positive, probably a bit more like previous years than we've had before, and so the downward spiral looks like it will be corrected, and so that's a bit of good news.
Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Tate. Turn on your mic, please. Thank you.
The transfers out to sewer and storm are gone. I'm assuming that means something phased out. We don't do that anymore, or those were special considerations. The section right underneath the.
And I may need to lean on someone else here.
We determined that there needs to be more of a building up of those particular SDC funds. So projects that would be happening under sewer and storm have already utilized those funds. And so with projects that might be happening in those funds, we're basically looking at using either the revenues being generated or trying to dip into the fund balance and try to rebuild up the SDC funds. There's just not a whole lot there to really do a whole lot of the project.
So there's no statutory reason that gives a percent to each line or whatever, it's all discretionary?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
And just to be clear, this is also a restricted fund for those, some people who may listen aren't aware of the fact that we cannot take that money and move it to the general fund by law.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without coming out here in handcuffs, yeah.
Maybe not handcuffs.
And just, I mean, it's an important element in the city's financing, obviously, to pay for streets and parks in particular. I think those are really key elements here, but you're right, they'd have to be used for those purposes. They'd have, in park situation, they'd have to add capacity. In roads, they'd have to add capacity, which is good for the city. I mean, part of the, the dynamic here is If the city's not growing, it is declining. I mean, that's just the reality of cities. Not everybody wants to understand that dynamic, but it is true. I mean, so these are important things for the city's growth and continuation.
Can I?
Yes, Mr. Tate.
So also, it sounds like it's somewhat discretionary, the amount of money that you transfer this year and the amount of money that you put into future expenditures is directly related to how much money you believe parks can actually spend in this budget year.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Well, can I be dumb and say, is this new construction? Is that where these come from, or?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's not a bad question at all. I mean, so we go through, so every project, for example, if there's an industrial project, we will go through and evaluate that based on there's several elements. One would be traffic impacts. So there's an Institute of Transportation Engineer document, and there's a traffic analysis that's done based on looking at the ITE. There's an assumption around how many trips those uses generate. So different industries, they have different impacts. The more of the impact, the higher the traffic impact fee will be for individual developments. For example, Oregon Liquor License Control is $1.15 million in system development charges. And Sequoia Logistics will be about 2.6 million.
Okay. Builders must be really happy.
Yeah, the building, yeah. And the unfortunate thing is, yes, we're adding capacity, and these system and development charges are for the parks and for the roads and for the sewer. And it's not lost on me. I recognize that added capacity to our neighborhoods is added capacity to the patrons of the library. Unfortunately, these funds cannot be used for that. There's no library SDC fund, unfortunately.
There ought to be.
Yeah, I mean, we add to parks, so we're not the library. That would be a legislative thing.
All right, and yes, Counselor Patton.
I would like to just point out that, while it is great that we're getting, what was it for OLCC?
1.15.
$1.15 million. The thing to keep in mind is that once they're in, they're in. Because they are a state agency, they will pay no taxes to the city.
No taxes.
And so therefore,
That
that is the
$1 million
money that we
is
get. And
Okay.
hopefully, we work out the park maintenance fee and the street maintenance fee, because luckily they don't get out of those. So at least through that, they will be able to be paying something into the system for wear and tear.
Can't argue that.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, next fund is the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund. Spencer?
This is a favorite.
We'll all end up there eventually.
Maybe, yeah. Well, not there, but
Somewhere.
somewhere.
So bear with me a little bit on this one. This is probably the one that I know the least about, mostly because Michael Nakano kind of handles the cemetery for the most part. But what the Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund is to take care, or to build up a savings account for the cemetery for once all the plots have been sold, and then the city can still maintain the grounds. So basically, if Scott reminded me for what you had said, is that a portion of the sale of the plot goes into this fund to then generate interest, kind of the only revenue that it has. And yeah, that's kind of it.
And again, not a general fund.
It is not a general fund, no.
And we still have the transfer to the library.
Yes.
To cover, and then the repayment coming back for the expenditure.
Yep.
And the interest that they pay goes into that interest line, I'm assuming, for interest revenues?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay,
On top of whatever is being earned at the LGIP.
okay.
Any other questions, comments?
It's pretty status quo.
Yes, Mayor Hodson.
Spencer, on the, what is the average cost of a plot? And then what's the percentage of that sale that goes into this fund?
I will have to get back to you on that.
Okay, and then my follow-up question to that would be then, can we increase the percentage from the sale into this fund to grow it quicker?
Those are good rounded questions.
Those are excellent questions. I will look into that and bring something back to you as soon as I can. All right.
Okay. Oh,
Shall we
yes,
put that on the
Counselor
bubble?
Waterman.
Yeah, and I recognize you probably don't have this, but is the cost of the purchase of the lots, is that like a fixed cost that can never be raised? Or is that something that can increase as cost of maintenance increases? Or how would that be, how would we do that?
Excellent question.
Wait, are you talking about like once a plot has been sold?
No,
or before?
for selling the plots.
Yeah, so there has been increases in the cost of the plots.
All right.
The reason I know this is because a few finance managers ago, I tried to get a deal on an oddball plot, and she's like, no, we don't give discounts on oddball plots, Mr. Patton. This was before I was on city council, so it wasn't some sort of like illegal bribe. And then the price has gone up over time.
So once I'm in, am I subjected to the 3% property tax increase?
No.
No?
Unfortunately.
Did you want me to put that?
I mean, I'm taking up residency, I mean.
You're going
Madam
to
Chair, do I
build
put that
these
question on the bubble for ever?
Back
cost
in
of plot, am I
back in the
putting
day,
that
that's
on
how
the-
they did it.
Yeah, in those couple of.
When you ran out of money, they dug you up and they put somebody else in that hole.
And so is it going to be full pretty soon? And then, is it, no?
We still have a fair amount of room to expand out to, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I have a question.
Yes,
Okay.
Counselor Stearns.
So, and maybe I'm misunderstanding something, so correct me if I'm wrong, but so there's a $40,000 interest revenue on the Perpetual Care Fund, and the library has a $15,000 interest expense on the, and I'm assuming the $15,000 library expense is part of the $40,000 on the, okay, so that's why, so my assumption's correct.
Yeah, because the cemetery loans the
In that
library.
case, the question is, the loan, is the interest that it charges mandatory, or is that a decision that can be made by this body?
It
Yeah.
could, it's been decided in the past, though, that
Right.
they wanted to preserve the perpetual fund so that the cemetery was cared for, but I'd be happy to put it on the bubble if you want to talk about it later.
Yeah.
It just is a potential.
It has
source
been
for
discussed before.
Short-term
Yeah.
issue.
In fact, I think the last budget meeting, didn't we, Jason?
Yeah, a couple of years now, I have asked that
Years ago.
the city eat the interest for this loan so that the library doesn't have to pay that money back. The justification for the interest is, and I understand this, because that $500,000 is being pulled out of the savings account, that $500,000 for the months that the library has that money is not making that interest. So essentially, it's shorting the interest, the potential of the fund, so that that interest that the library pays is essentially making up for the interest lost from it being not in the savings account for the cemetery.
Okay, but, and maybe it'd be a good idea, I mean, if we did that, it would be something we'd have to do with our eyes open, knowing that it might impact future ability of the cemetery to pay for its maintenance costs, but perhaps sometime when somebody doesn't have anything else to do in the city, a projection of where that might be and what the needs might be in the future, with some modest assumptions for inflation and such, just to see how needed it, what if there is a big, what the need there would be. Anyway, I just think it should be something we could discuss anyway.
I added it to the list.
Okay.
I was going to say, Counselor Water, want to add it to the bubble list?
It's on it.
My question on it is the interest reviewed yearly, regularly, or is it just kind of set and we just kind of go with that every year, or how does that?
So the calculation of the interest, I look at the LGIP interest rate on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Calculate that until we basically are able to receive the county's money. And then once that happens, I cut it off and try to get it paid as soon as possible to help save the additional costs. So I try to take it to the very day when it gets paid, so that way I'm not incurring additional days. That makes sense.
So it's pretty one-to-one, what the library is paying is what they is equal to what they would have lost. It's not, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I guess it's on the bubble anyway, so,
Thank you.
okay.
Next fund is the Forfeiture Fund. Chief Trout?
Hello. This one's a pretty simple fund. It's pretty small, but this fund comes from money seized in drug-related cases. There's two parts to it. There's a civil forfeiture and there's a federal forfeiture. State civil forfeiture laws have changed over the years, and so we really do not expect a whole lot coming from that, but we did put $2,000 just in case. The other part is the federal forfeiture law, which we do expect some funds. We have a detective on the major drug task force in Clackamas County. They do bring in some money, so we are expecting some, but it's hard to predict how much. So we put about $15,000 in there for next year. These funds have restricted use, it has to be related to drug-related cases. And we kind of use these funds as the needs come up and it meets the requirements. Pretty simple.
So what are those requirements?
Really, I mean, kind of related to drug and investigations. So it's like, let's say, like a body wire that we need. So something like that that's related to drug cases. Yeah. And it has to, there's federal forfeiture reporting and stuff, and it's very, very strict.
It's a fund we want to stay small. We just don't like drugs.
That's right.
Yes, Counselor Water.
Is this fund, are you able to use this for like the dog handling, dog work for the drug?
The dog we have now is a tracking patrol dog, okay, so it's not a drug dog, but that's great. If we had a drug dog, we could use some of those funds for that, but we don't at this point. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Okay, thank you.
Fleet Services Fund, Todd? I thought we did that. Yeah.
We did fleet.
I thought we had done that. Yeah. Okay. Anything you need to know about fleet?
I think we did fleet last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're good.
Since Todd's not going to come down, the things that we did discuss with the facilities, and that also does touch fleet. So his internal charges will have some reductions for facilities. Just a FYI, that's part of that reduction.
You did a great Todd imitation.
I did?
Okay, next fund is Sewer Combined Fund, and we'll have Monica come down and discuss wastewater treatment plant to begin with. And this begins on page 99.
98.
It starts at 99.
98, excuse me. Yes.
Yeah, my bad. 98.
Okay, wastewater treatment plant. Good evening. First of all, I just wanted to share a couple of the highlights that we've had over the year. Another year of 100% NPDES permit compliance, which is a huge accomplishment. We also have been applying for quite a few different grants. Some of those have been pretty small, like $1,000, and others larger, like $20,000. We anticipate by the end of the fiscal year, or maybe just after, the total to be about 32,000 in grants that we've been able to pull in. And we've also applied for quite a few state grants, as well as partnering with some engineering firms that are looking at doing some pilot studies and things like that. So that's been really well done this year as well. Something interesting we looked at this year, we finally have fully staffed the treatment plant. We've felt a real shortage in qualified operators that are state certified to operate treatment plants. There's been shortages at the schools, folks going through, and a lot of the agencies are meeting to try and figure out how to make that work. So a strategy that we've developed at the plant is to, instead of, we had quite a bit of turnover, about 85% turnover about a year and a half ago. And we started underfilling positions. So instead of hiring a lead operator, we would bring folks in at the operator 2 level and start supporting their journey to get certified at the next level. So we're working on that right now. Lucky for us, we have one retired, very seasoned operator who's working part-time for us right now, a couple days a week, and we anticipate having him around a couple of years while we maneuver through a lot of our capital projects coming up. We're going to start doing some very significant improvement work, replacement work at the treatment plant. So he will help support that and help with training. So you will see our FTE has gone up a smidge because of that part-time job position. But something we also looked at, we talked a little bit here about the janitorial services. Unfortunately, at the treatment plant, we've had some real challenges with security and the janitorial services. In fact, janitorial services has cost us a lot of money in overtime because they have tripped the alarm system so many times coming in and out of the building. It's really not worth it. So recently I let them go, and I am cleaning toilets, and we're doing what we can to get by until the end of this year. But in the budget, what we've done is we've pulled a parks maintenance position that had been not filled, and because of the shortage with funding, Jerry and I talked quite a bit about this, but move the position over to wastewater, and that position will do the janitorial work, but will also take care of the unofficial dog park, the sisters property, which sometimes parks would take care of, and sometimes we would take care of, and sometimes it would fall through the cracks, but we would do our best. We have a lot of small trees over there that really take a lot of care that we haven't been able to care as much for as we'd like to. So that position will do some parks, so to speak. We also maintain the easement going to the outfall, out to the Willamette, and that's along the trail there. That's kind of parks related. We've had trees come down, and we've had to hire that out. And we've also got an aging facility. We're looking at doing some significant improvements over the next 5 years and really gearing up that capital plan. But in doing that, a lot of our buildings need paint. The equipment needs some TLC. That is maybe not an operator level of work. When we're paying journey level operators, we're paying for their expertise in operating equipment and understanding process and compliance requirements. And painting is a different skill set. So having that position, being able to fulfill those pieces will be a really great for us, and we'll actually fill that position. The other really great thing is we recently had Clackamas Community College come through, and their attendance is up for the wastewater and water treatment plant program. And funny enough, one of my colleagues that has worked at the water treatment plant in previous years is now retired, is mentoring one of those students and called up and said, hey, can I bring him? He lives in Canby. I'd like to bring him by the plant and do a tour. So we did that, and he enrolled at Clackamas, and he was very excited to come back with the students and talked it up. And is super excited. He may be even watching the budget committee meeting, because I said if that position goes through, we may be hiring. And he is very excited as a Canby resident and a student at Clackamas to possibly apply for that entry-level position. So that's kind of what we're doing at the plant to try and train up operators, even in this entry-level position. They will get exposure, and as people retire, that person hopefully will want to progress and get certified and grow with us. So that's the strategy. It has been challenging. So we are fully staffed right now. We've worked a lot with HR to restructure a little bit, and getting, like I said, 85% turnover was pretty drastic. So we reclassified an operator position more into a maintenance position, and that has worked really well. Have quite the dynamic team there, really taking care of things. As I mentioned, we are looking at increasing capital spending quite a bit. We have a lot of equipment that is at the 30-year mark and even a little bit older, which means we have done a phenomenal job maintaining that equipment, but it's getting at the end of its useful life. So before we see some catastrophe, and before it all happens at one time, we're starting to get a little more aggressive about getting some major projects done, which is impactful while you're operating the plant and treating all the wastewater coming in. Now we're talking about taking portions of it offline and doing pump arounds and modifications, and that takes a level of expertise, and it takes maneuvering and additional time and hours and attention. Thankfully, the UV project is something that had to be stalled a little bit this year. When I first came on board, started looking at the different technology that we had chosen and asked for more data. And as we started digging into it, we realized the proposed process was really only going to get us through for a couple years, and we would then need to do another upgrade. So we backed up a little bit, came before you and asked if we could go through a more streamlined process, a design build. And so we're moving quickly through that, and that is going well. What we are getting ready to do right now, we've actually gone back to recalculate some of the design flows, because our flows are much lower than what we've told DEQ we're capable of. And because of that, DEQ says we'll build an 8 million gallon capacity, even though we treat typically 1 million gallons a day. So we're justifying a good upgrade for us, an excellent upgrade, more like 4 MGD, not 8. So we have room for growth, but we're not overspending on equipment that we're not going to run. So right now we're working on those calculations, and we're going to go before DEQ with a justification of building the right size for the treatment plant. So we're not overspending, we're spending the right amount. But that project is moving along. We're expecting to get through design and start construction. A lot of the equipment is 8 months to a year out. So we're really working at trying to do things simultaneously to keep that going. We also have dewatering equipment in this list. Dewatering equipment basically takes the excess water out of our solids. So when we're hauling, we're more efficient. We are fewer trucks on the road. And you probably all remember the dryer, or some of you, that blew up.
The dryer issue.
Yes, we're not doing that again.
Please don't trigger my PTSD.
Exactly. We are not doing that again. We actually have traveled a few different places to look at some different technologies, and have talked to probably 30 different treatment plants all over the US, and have found a technology that we really like. We trialed the technology. It gave us probably 5% drier product, less polymer use, And so we anticipate once that's installed, we'll actually be saving some money there. So that is exciting. That's another project that we'll be working on this next year that's in the budget. And another one is to look at design of the admin building. We do have mixed company in the building now. We have a female operator, male operators, myself, and we have one restroom, and we have one small locker room. And we have some compromised areas that we've got electrical mixed in with office space that's not really meeting code. So we have some ADA and compliance scenarios going on where we need to do a full upgrade. We've been working on security. We have a new gate and those kind of things this year as well. And then we are also looking at upgrading our microscope. We haven't had a new one for like 15 years. And we do a lot of identification of the microbiology to understand and make good decisions on process changes. So it's time to invest in that. And we'll be looking at a microscope that if we're doing public involvement, that we can utilize a TV screen and be able to show the kids not only looking at the microscope, but being able to watch all the microbiology doing its work to break down the solids and treat wastewater. So, yeah. And it should be mobile too. That's what we're looking for. So the material and services, really some of the increment increases you'll see, utilities and such, but also our permit fees and PDES, which is with DEQ. We have to have certified operators, so some of the training funds needed to go up a little bit there as well. Our costs for materials and services, everything is going up. So some of the chemicals we use, that's going up. So that kind of explains where the increases are. So over the next 5 years, instead of doing a huge treatment plant upgrade and the rates going up, we're doing smaller ones over the next 5 years, so it doesn't impact the rates like it could. So we're trying to be forward-thinking and looking at asset management and doing some planning there. So that's wastewater. Any questions?
Yes, Mayor Hodson.
A couple questions. Monica, thank you. One is regarding the facilities itself. It sounds like we are very outdated.
We are, but the equipment is working very well, and that's why we really focused on bringing a maintenance technician in to make sure that we are on top of all of that. One of the other line items is to do a full asset management condition assessment on all the electrical so we don't miss something. But yes, a lot of the equipment, like we're replacing our influent pumps this year that are 30 plus years old, recycle pumps that recycle the bacteria back to the facility. Some of those pumps weren't really designed right to begin with, so we're excited they're old and they need to be replaced, and now we're going to get some that will do what we need them to do. So,
and then my other question is obviously a lot of conversation at the council regarding changing or just direction with the reserve fund and headcounts and whatnot. Your position that
Yes.
you're looking to add, is that within this fund or is this a general fund?
it's within this fund. So we took a general fund position that had not been filled and had been sitting there and really was sitting in the parks department, and Jerry was not filling that. He didn't feel like it needed to be filled. So, if he would have filled it, it would have increased the general fund cost for parks. So at this point, we needed to do something, and I don't think we're making any changes with janitorial this year. And we needed a dedicated person to be taking care of the sisters' property, but Jerry didn't want to fill that position because it would add to the parks cost. So wastewater will fund that position and manage that position.
Be a little bit of a hybrid between.
It is.
Your department.
Treatment plant actually owns that property,
Right.
so it's not too far off, but it's, like I said, more of an entry level, and really the way the market is with finding trained people. I like the idea of having someone who lives in Canby, who's excited about this field, who could come in entry level and kind of grow with us and stay with us, really.
Where you going? Go ahead. So to me, it sounds like some pretty creative and cooperative work between you and Jerry and directors and finding ways to help the city but not impact the general fund?
Yes, yeah. And you can't see that in the cuts and things, but we've been really trying to brainstorm on ways to do things. Like we want to really lift up asset management over public works. You know, we really wanted to add another FTE and kind of work that in. But with the way things are, it's just not going to happen right now. We're still going to try and get that program. And I have a lot of background in asset management, so I'm going to, between all these capital projects, we're not filling the project manager position this year in Public Works. So I'm myself at treatment plant, handling all these capital projects, managing the wastewater treatment plant, and going to try and help with the asset management program lift. So we're all trying to do more, trying to cross lines to help make sure that Canby is covered where we need to be covered with the funding we have.
Okay, I think that actually answered my question. Because I was going to ask, why are we adding an FTE that would entail insurance and PERS and whatnot, instead of just getting a different janitorial program that maybe didn't trip your alarms. So I was like, why are we doing this and creating, but it sounds like you and Jerry have been collaborative on trying to share an employee that could not be a general fund employee, but still be an asset to the city. So, all right, well, you know, that's typical.
And if Parks picks up and the money's there and they need to go over there and we get janitorial, we'll.
This would be kind of a floater position.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because my first thought was, why are we not just replacing it with a different janitorial? So
yeah,
that.
And we did want to bring janitorial in-house, but when we sat down and really crunched the numbers, it just was apparent that this wasn't the year to do it. So we're looking at different ways to figure that out.
Yeah, and it seems like a fee for janitorial would be less than the extra, I mean, you got the wages and you have to also incur the insurance and the PERS, you have to consider the whole cost of that FTE.
Exactly.
So,
We are getting a really good deal with our part-time, very experienced operator who's worked at the Canby treatment plant for over 20 years, because he's technically retired and we're not paying benefits or PERS or any of that. We're just paying him hourly to be there a few days a week to help with some of these things. So that is good.
Mr. Pendleton.
When you look at, excuse me, when you look at the construction budget, we're talking about $15 million over the next 5 years.
Yes.
Are we going to be able to pay for that with sewer funds and SDCs?
Yes. Yes. Yep, I have looked at that. Our SDC fund is not plentiful right now, but what do we call it here? The other fund, the reserve fund or not the SDC. We use different terminology.
So we're, what's that called?
So when we have a project, it either comes out of SDCs or.
Your fund balance.
Okay. Fund balance.
Yeah, because sewer doesn't have anything else that's, so it's.
Fund balance.
Yeah, the reserve fund balance.
Okay.
So combining the SDCs and the sewer bills, you know, everybody, we get monthly sewer revenues from everybody. What I'm concerned about is we're not placing ourselves in a position where we're going to have to go into any kind of debt to finance this, are we?
At this point, no.
Okay.
Not with the way that the fund's budget looks. They're healthy. They're extremely healthy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was one of the decisions why they were making to be able to go forward with this, is because they're sitting at a very healthy balance.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Clarification, though.
Yeah.
the asset management program is still sitting on the books. And so we're keeping that on there because I thought I heard you say that you might have removed it, but it's not.
I didn't,
Okay. I
Yeah.
wanna Make sure. 'Cause I-
yeah, there was discussion about how were we going to get it done,
Perfect.
so,
Thanks, Martha.
yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Spencer will do the rest of the sewer funds, sewer combined fund.
So the collections fund is dealing with any of the sewer that is not actually at the treatment plant. It's everything that's in the pipes underground, out throughout town. Not a whole lot of changes for materials and services. The increase of the FTE is not an actually new position. It's just a reallocation of current employees' time spent. So kind of how it's set up is the streets, sewer, and storm crew is kind of all done by the same group of guys, and then it's just a matter of where they're putting their time in for certain things through their time cards. So the increase is not an increase in an FTE, it's just a reallocation of some of the duties that are being done. But then for materials and services, there's not really any changes there. For capital outlay, the 10th Avenue sanitary sewer is part of that current projects that's going on, so that's just going to be a continuation for the next budget cycle. Kind of the same thing with the fuel station. This is the portion from the collection sewer fund that's paying into that fuel station. What do we got next? The North Pine Street realignment, we're going to be did I jump one?
No, just,
Oh, okay.
that might keep you on track.
The North Pine Street realignment is going to be relocating the sewer main that is currently going underneath the fairgrounds arena. We're going to be hopefully rerouting it down 4th Avenue over to Pine and then tie back in that way. This
No, I'm just having horrible thoughts about that being under the arena.
It keeps me up at night because it's one of our largest mains in town, and it has a hard time finding it being under the arena.
Yeah, no, that would be good to get that out of there.
So, but yeah, this money is just for the planning of the engineering side of things. This won't be the construction cost. And then we're hoping to have all the engineering and pre-planning for the project done this fiscal year and then budget for the actual project the following year. The next one is the industrial park to 99E connection, building the sewer from the intersection of First Avenue and Walnut out to 99 and then connecting it over into the Willow Creek Estates. Council just approved that for the second reading last night, first portion of that. And then the asset management portion for the collections. That's kind of it. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay.
And so then the next portion is the stormwater portion. Again, the FTEs is just a reallocation from the current employees. No real changes for materials and services. And then for projects, we have the stormwater portion going into the fuel station, the South Ivy project overlay is what we are going to be paying the county for the last portion of that project for getting storm put in along with it. And then the stormwater for Industrial Park to 99E, taking care of all the storm for that street that's going in. And then the 10th Avenue project, and then the asset management. So,
Any questions? Yes, Councilor Waterman.
These are different funds?
yes.
How come the asset management is in both funds?
So the total cost for the asset management program is broken out into all the different
Okay, so it's
funds
split
that are
between
going
the
to be
funds.
used.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
And then I'm going to pass it to you for the unallocated.
Yeah, so the non-allocated is simply just the fund that where specific items cannot be isolated to just one fund in that sewer, in the whole sewer proprietary funds. So things like sewer billing, that's going to go across the board, so that sits in unallocated. The franchise fees that are paid to the revenue side, again, that's not just allocated to one fund, so it's sitting in a non-allocated fund. And then the overhead transfers are across the board, so those are sitting in there. And then you have basically a slight FTE cost there. And the reason you see 0.4 is because it's always been 0.36, and I round up.
Yes, Mayor Hudson.
So franchise fee, $200,000 bump in that, what does that do to?
So it's my understanding that the franchise fees are pretty much at their max. And when we started asking around other jurisdictions where their franchise fee percentages were, we were already at that point. So if we try to raise that, then I'm not really sure how legally we're able to do that to ourselves, because we're paying a higher percentage than all other franchise fees. So the 340 is basically a match, or it agrees to the amount of revenue that we project to bring in for the next fiscal year.
And this is what we're charging our own utilities for occupancy of the right-of-way, just like we do other utilities, other private utilities,
So this is the fee we're charging ourselves.
And it goes into the general fund then?
Yes.
Yeah, it goes over to the not allocated portion of that general fund.
Any other questions? Okay. So, Madam Chair, that completes the non-general funds, and it is 7:30, and we're ready to get into the general fund. I don't know if you want to take a stretch break for 5 minutes and
Yes.
come back and get started.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, we are back at the Canby City Budget Committee meeting. Eileen?
Great, thank you. Before we get into the funds, wanted to give Scott an opportunity to explain a little bit more about how we arrived at the 20%. As I said before, the council made that decision last night, and we will get that codified in resolution at your next regular meeting. So, so Scott, do you want to take it from here?
Thank you. So the 20%, if we look at page 44, and we're looking at the far right lower hand column of the 2026 proposed. So the calculation is all going to be based off of our operating revenue. The total is $12,194,290. And if we also look at the general fund up on the upper left corner of our resources, that agrees to the $12,194,290. So that's our operating revenue for our proposed fiscal year of 2026. The 20% calculation comes out to $2,438,858. Then you see the $3,048,573 to get the 25%. And our ending fund balance, as calculated now, is at $2,439,296. That's the combination of the unallocated or the unrestricted, plus those other two reserves, which are reserved by council. And those can be removed by council as well. So they would be included as part of that calculation. What cannot be included is PEG, because that is a third-party restriction. So that is excluded from the calculation.
Can you define PEG for those?
Public education and government.
Sorry. Accountants are big on acronyms.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that I was not sure what, I mean, I should go through this.
He's taking over for former Counselor Parker and getting those things defined. He would always call that out too. Well, no, maybe you don't, you're right. You don't know the lingo.
No, I'm glad you asked, yeah.
Yep. So our ending fund balance percent of our operating revenue comes out to being 20% based on the adjustments that were all made by the directors. About 11:30 last night till about 3 o'clock this afternoon. So with all of those changes, we've managed to get us to a 20% ending fund balance of our operating revenue to satisfy the financial policy set in place.
And the department directors are prepared to go through those reductions as they present their general fund budgets, so.
Okay.
Yes, Council President Henson.
As was discussed, when we hit that bottom level, the 20 to 25, we're at the 20%. I understand it's not even been 24 hours, so I don't expect that plan today, but I'm just wondering, do you have a plan to make the plan on how we're going to replenish that reserve? Timeline.
Well, my plan is to begin working with the city council right after this budget is adopted, so we get right back into it. And as I indicated last night, I have there are a number of revenues that came out of that League of Oregon Cities revenue toolkit that I think that we could crunch those numbers for each of those revenue sources, or if you want to discuss the merits of those revenue sources. Some of them require voter approval, some do not, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the plan for
That's the plan for the plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Tate.
And all of the,
Can you turn your mic on, please? Thank you.
and all of the fund balances are unassigned? There's no committed or assigned, is that correct?
No, so there is one committed, if you want to use that terminology, and that is the PEG, but that's because it's being placed by a third-party restriction. The others are placed as a kind of more of an assigned, they're assigned as a reserve from the council, but that doesn't mean that the council can change their mind and say, we would rather use that for X, Y, Z, and not for what they've reserved it for, such as the workers' comp retro plan and the turf, sorry. So they can go back and say, we would rather use those funds and utilize those for other avenues. And they can actually remove that assignment.
Okay.
So that's why it's added as part of that calculation
But the reserve on the PEG access is specified in a contract.
by a third party.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, the reason I'm asking is that if you look at the council's policy, they use terms committed and assigned. You just described something I think is assigned, which is actually committed. It just doesn't seem to be consistent or clean in how all of that language, and
It's budget versus kind
Policy.
of general accepted accounting principle language. And there's always going to be those, there's differences between the nomenclature. But that's the definition of basically the council having an assigned reserve versus having it being committed by a third party.
yeah, see, and this says committed is council, assigned is she gets to do it. So it just makes it confusing for everybody when the policy of the council doesn't match generally accepted accounting principles.
Right, and there's restricted, unrestricted, and then they come over to different, it's all nomenclature, but in general practice, that's pretty much what we look towards is who has a right to put on a restriction. In this case, it's PEG. In the other cases, it was something that the council determined to have as a reserve.
It would just be helpful if we could get the council policy to line up with the same kind of language that we use for the budget.
Restricted, committed, it seems to make sense to me, but okay.
So in other words, we have a choice about the 14,977 and the 50,000, but we do not have a choice about the $44,884.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to restate.
Yeah.
So we can just forget about discussing that number. The other numbers are within our rights to change.
Yep. And with that, then this is, I think, the perfect opportunity to be able to point out, because there's been discussion of budget shortfall that's been going around. And when we look at the 2025 budget, when we go back through and we look at the 30%, and we look at our projected 42, I think it's a great opportunity that we have now to try to get an understanding of where does this budget shortfall actually occur? Because it looks like we're actually going to wind up about $1 million plus more than we anticipated.
Question?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Counselor Davis?
The budget shortfall you're talking about is out of your own words yourself at the mid-year budget retreat. Okay, and then there were, I understand there were also reductions in this year's budget in order to make up some of the difference of that shortfall. Is that correct?
I don't ever recall saying there was a budget shortfall.
Okay, well, you
I
can watch the
Go
tape.
back and see if that came out of my mouth.
Yeah, you can watch the tape.
Yep.
40 minutes.
Yes, Counselor Waterman.
If you said that there was a budget shortfall, would you just say that that was just a mispronunciation of what your intention of what you were trying to say?
My recollection was I admitted that there was a double counting in beginning fund balance. And then I believe it was Counselor Davis that said we had a budget shortfall of $3 million. That was my recollection.
So there was 1.5 was the original, and there was 1.5 that we just added by accident, so that adds up to 3.
2 points, it was 2.6.
Oh, yeah, so, but the, okay, thanks.
All right.
So
Counselor Stearns?
I'm just puzzling a little bit, and maybe it's just my curiosity, but I looked at the budget for fiscal year 2025, beginning fund balance was 10, and then the projected was 7.
That's
Is that where
actual.
the difference is on the page 45, the top? Is that where that came out? I'm just.
Yep.
Because I was looking at a very large change in the projected beginning fund balance, because I was kind of put an Excel spreadsheet comparing the difference. And then my curiosity is, so even though we're at 42% at least according to the 44, page 44, we're projected to be 42% over, or have 4% over what we had originally planned. That still only translates to a $4.8 million instead of what we've had in prior years.
3.5?
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, so this proposed beginning fund balance of 4.8 million was something that we had budgeted earlier to get to have that, the reserve down that low, or I'm just trying to wrap my head around. My eyes is going to the difference between 23, 24, 25, and then.
So the budget.
And then 26, which seems to be like half of what any other year was, even if 25 was abnormal high.
So you're looking at when the city received its ARPA funds.
Okay.
So when the city received its 2 tranches, that was about $4 million plus.
Okay, so
that's when
the
2023.
26 is the first budget year without ARPA funds.
Correct.
In the last 3 years.
Correct.
Okay. So that's kind of.
And that was where that entry error happened in the budget for 2025. It was double counted at the beginning of that fund balance. Upon our conclusion of our audit, we received the 7.6 as its actual number. So when we take that into account, if you look at the ending fund balance at budget 2025, if that had not been there, it would have been more of a $500,000 of ending fund balance.
Okay.
All else being equal.
Okay, so that would, so most of these, yeah, I just was looking at the revenue side today. Between the 25 and 26, planning is going to go down. I'm just seeing that looks like about a $32,000 going down, and
revenue.
Yeah, under the revenue on
You're talking about
page
revenue?
45 top. I'm just showing the number I'm looking at. Where we say planning, well, had revenues of 377, but now it's going to drop to 345, maybe, I guess. I mean, 25 budget was 377, and then for 26 it's 345. So that revenue source is going down.
And and I would probably bet that Don would be the best one to discuss why his revenue recommendations are where they're at.
Okay.
But at some point, I think if the planning in the building, if we're at max capacity, then there's going to be less planning and building that would be happening. That would be my educated guess, but Don's the chief master at that.
Less people dying from the cemetery budget revenues. I was just, okay, maybe.
Less people died?
Well, since there's a cemetery revenues are going to go down from 63,000 to 54.
All those people die, there's less plots available to buy.
Okay, maybe that's it.
Everybody dies.
I'm just asking questions.
Yeah, and so I think at that, then, if we want to dive into individual funds and go through them, then.
Okay,
turn
well, we
back
can
over
go
to
into
Eileen
individual
to-
funds, and then I'll deal with it then, I suppose.
Okay.
Really quick, I just have one last question. So I notice here, hold on, Jason, shut your face. For the Maple Street turf replacement, that it looks like it's increased. Did you plan to put money in there this year for that?
Yeah, my recollection was you were asking to have money go in annually.
Yeah.
And if I recall correctly, it was $35,000 a year. And in order to get us to a 20%, I cut you off a little bit.
No, I was surprised that any money even went in there. So I was expecting you to just take it all, so.
But again,
Put it on the bubble list.
It's your recommendation if you want to keep it there, or if you would rather see that go into the unrestricted portion. But it's still there as part of the overall ending fund balance that can be utilized.
Awesome.
Okay, so just looking at administration to begin with.
45.
That begins on page 49. So the election expense has gone up quite a bit. We're anticipating a charter election, and so we put money in the budget for a charter election. Professional and technical services, that's a reduction that we originally budgeted. We originally budgeted 60,000, well, I kept it at 100,000, so I reduced that to 50,000. That just gives me a little bit less money to work with in any kind of strategic initiative the council may have. The attorney services has gone up quite a bit, and just in reflection of what we seem to be paying the city attorney. So codification I took down to 2,000. Mayor and travel training, I took a little bit out of that budget and knocked it down to 25,000. Admin, travel and training, I'm not anticipating going to ICMA this year, so I took a little bit out of that budget. And supplies and services, I took that down a little bit as well. So that was my contribution to getting to the 20% reserve. Do you have any questions on that? Yes.
What's a charter election?
What's a
charter election?
The city charter is the kind of the constitution of the city, and so the council has discussed wanting to put a charter election out there, and unless the election was held on the same November day as a presidential election, we don't pay for those, but all other elections we have to pay for. So
By charter election, I mean, we wish to change the charter.
Amendments. You amend-
And it has to go before the voters.
it has to go to, exactly.
So that's what we mean by we're not trying to choose a charter from another charter, but to.
Thank you.
For
Yeah.
Councillor Patton?
So just to clarify that, I guess I did not realize this. So if it's a presidential election, we don't have to pay to have it put on the ballot.
That's correct.
But when it's like a mid
Like,
one,
I'm anticipating maybe November or May of
Yeah.
this year, we would have to pay.
well, I don't think May's gonna happen. Of this year, wait.
Next May.
Next May, okay.
Next May.
It just happened. But we could, but if we postpone it to November, which is not a
No, it would have to,
presidential.
it would have to be November 28th.
It would have to be November
free.
28th.
So the mid-year elections for congressmen, that doesn't count for
Correct.
our freebie? Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So we would have to decide as a council if we want to wait 3 years to address the charter issues. And I don't think we have the appetite for that. I kind of feel like people are wanting to have that discussion now, but I could be wrong.
Well, as stated, one of the things that we'd like to get out of the charter is the requirement for a contract to be adopted by ordinance. So it takes literally, 6 weeks, 2 months to approve contracts because they go on the first reading on one meeting, the second reading on the next meeting, and then they go into effect 30 days later. So it takes a long time to approve a contract.
Is it contracts in general? I understood it to be you just wanted the signature limit to be raised from 50K.
That too.
Ah, okay, so there'll be a deep discussion then.
Right. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? In the HR budget, we were able to do less. The liability insurance premium is going up quite a bit from 520 to 650,000. So I wasn't able to do as much with this budget because that's the biggest item on that budget. Did take professional services down to 32,000 from 75. and took the employee recognition down from 9,000 to 5,000. So we will do a little bit less employee recognition from a fanfare standpoint, but we certainly appreciate our employees, and we will continue to find other ways to thank them for their hard work. So that's all on HR.
The employee recognition seems like it was a new category added in 25, correct?
It was moved over from administration. It had been in administration.
Okay, so it was there before.
Right.
Yeah, it was up here when
Okay.
it was blanked out.
Okay, sorry. Thanks for pointing that. Too many numbers.
Says the accountant.
And by employee recognition, you're talking like the Christmas party and the summer picnic? Okay.
Okay. Who's next? Finance. Go for it, Scott.
So page 61 is the finance budget.
61.
And with the changes that finance made were a reduction in professional and technical services. We reduced our auditing fees based on the contract that I received yesterday. We've reduced our copier lease and maintenance, and that hopefully will be looked at across all funds once we start looking at our leases with all copiers as they're getting older. We also reduced our printing and binding. We crossed out all training, travel, so all, any continued education for any payroll, for any certified public accounting, anything to that nature will be on the employee to pay for.
Scott, how much was that?
The travel was 5,000. We reduced our membership dues and fees by a couple of $100. With the help of Spencer and the reduction of facilities, that went down by a couple $1,000, about $1,500. We took out our supplies and services line item. It was about $8,000. We'll try to look to see where we can get supplies and services cheaper. My understanding is predecessors were out at garage sales to gather paper and pens. That might be something that a couple of our employees like to do, garage sale.
So what falls in the supplies and service line?
Things such as pens, papers, batteries, those types of things.
So you eliminated that budget entirely?
Yes, in order to meet the 12%.
So then, when the need for batteries, papers, and pens comes about.
Yep.
Is that just to cross your fingers, throw it there, and hope that
No, I
numbers
think
are there
it's,
at the end of the
it's,
year?
yeah, it's more of a, making sure that the other line items that we have a budget for are more closely looked at. So if we need to order batteries, then we'll be looking at making sure that we're ordering batteries that are cheaper. Rather than like a Duracell, we may go with an Amazon type of battery.
So you're buying 2 of those for every 1 Duracell?
And they're cheaper.
They only last half as long.
And then our miscellaneous office equipment was another line item that we scratched out. We've had good luck so far with our office equipment, so in the event that something does blow up, we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But right now, we have fairly decent equipment that's lasted us for the past few years and has performed adequately. So that amount got us down to our 12% that we had discussed yesterday.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Court?
Good evening, Maya Benham, Court Director.
Jessica Roberts, Court Supervisor.
I'd like to just begin by saying thank you to the City Council for last evening. I wasn't able to attend the council meeting, but I wanted to say thank you for the approval of the agreement with Ms. Heil, our city prosecutor. We're very appreciative of the work that Ms. Heil brings as city prosecutor. For us, 12% of the municipal court, things are pretty tight, but we were able to come up with a few things without cutting technically FTEs, but in order to get there, we potentially have to cut contracted staff. So Jessica will be going through the direct impacts, but I'd like to go over a couple of the significant cuts. The first one would be to cut our bailiff service, which would create no security in the courtroom without PD's help. Even with PD's help, it may be limited because, as you may know, they can be called out at any time and unable to stay in the courtroom. I personally worry about losing our current service, as I want my staff and I frankly want everyone who walks into the courtroom to feel safe. And from a liability standpoint, I can't know when an incident may happen, and I would like to avoid that even being a possibility. The second significant cut is to eliminate one public defender, which I really do not want to do. We recently hired two. We've always had two, but two had recently resigned, and we just recently rehired two. To take on the criminal docket that we just had returned last year. We brought back criminal court to be handled locally and for the good of the city, and the extra cases require time and key staff to run efficiently. We've had two public defenders to be able to handle the increase in the criminal docket. We've also had them to help with any potential conflict of interest, allowing the cases to continue on with another defender if needed. And I'll let Jessica go into the details of more of the impacts of line by line.
Okay, so a 12% reduction of the municipal court's budget means reducing our materials and services by $30,196. In order to reduce the budget by 12%, we would need to eliminate the following. As Maya already mentioned, eliminating our current contracted security service during court sessions, which is currently with Oregon Patrol. Second, eliminating one of our public defender positions, which would require the other defense attorney to handle the full docket, as we just discussed. The third reduction would be reducing our Spanish interpreter services during court sessions down to once a month. We currently have an interpreter available for our criminal docket as needed on both criminal docket days, and we do try to limit it to once a month on traffic, but we have a large Spanish-speaking customer base, and interpreter services are becoming more and more needed, but we would need to limit her services. The fourth reduction would be eliminating all training and conferences and memberships for all of our court staff. We do attend 2 yearly trainings a year that are pretty important to legislative updates and court policies and procedures, but we would need to eliminate all of those. And the fifth would be, we would no longer be able to share the cost of Judge Graff's required trainings and memberships. We currently split those costs every year with Troutdale Municipal Court, where he's also a judge, but we would not be able to handle the split of those expenses either. I think that's everything.
Yes, Councilor Davis.
Where is the bail or the security charge?
Yeah, so it was, we, in this fiscal year, switched from a bailiff to a security company. So it was looped into our supplies and services as far as this fiscal year. We did have it as a contract service in the previous proposed budget, but it was just completely taken out. So it's not showing as a separate line item in this proposed budget because it was newly added as a contract service.
And how much was that?
About 8,300 for the year.
It's on page 63 of the previous book we got.
Yeah,
If
and
you
it was
wanna-
eliminated
if
in
you
this
still have the
one.
old one. I'm sitting here flipping. comparing.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, that was cut. But yeah, it's still page 63, but it's in the one with the tabs that we first got. It's so 8,300 is for the bailiff only, or was that part of what you were talking about with Judge Graff?
That is the bailiff only.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would recommend that we put that on the bubble
I
for discussion as well.
beat you to it.
I think it's important for the safety of our people.
Yeah, I beat you to it. It's on there. We'll revisit that.
And,
Yes, Counselor Stearns.
yeah, how much is the public defender budget?
Right now it's budgeted, we pay each defender $1,800 a month, but we did increase the contract that would stay to compensate that person for having to do 2 court dates a month. So basically, we took the difference of what we would need to make 12% to up the one contract to about $2,600 a month and eliminate one full $1,800 a month contract.
Okay.
So, yes.
Yes, Counselor.
Is that under the attorney services line?
Yes.
So it's going from 106 to 92?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so,
In the old book, it's here, 106.1.
Sorry for all the back and forth.
And-
so 92.
And now it's 92,
Attorney
250.
services, so,
So it's like 8,000 different.
Yeah,
Or,
then-
well, 14,000 different.
removing the public defenders, that's gonna cause, I would assume, if they are needed, and I assume that removing them would cause more delays in final disposition.
It could, because it would limit it, we would only have one public defense attorney to handle the entire criminal docket. They are currently each running about 10 to 12 cases a month. That would double his workload, so could potentially take him some more time to resolve cases and meet with clients.
I wanna propose, just put it on the bubble for the public defenders. And the,
I put them both on already.
Okay.
I know you guys.
keep in my mind,
I'm reading your mind. Bailiff, public defender, it's already on there.
nothing's worse than delayed justice. I mean, there's too much of it already in the rest of the world. We don't need to contribute to that.
Okay.
For court cases go on for years.
Yes, Mayor
I know
Hodson.
I've participated in them.
What's the cost of adding and backing the public defender? So there's
Right
two
now,
for
with
them.
we reduced it down by $11,950.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Counselor President Hensley.
Thank you. I noticed on the old one, you wanted $9,500 for interpreter services, and you reduced it down to 63.
Yeah.
But the projected for this year was 6,000. So how much is it really going to impact the service for that interpretive service?
Yes, we this year found an interpreter that is charging a pretty substantial lesser rate than when we've used in the past. So we've started using her services more. It would probably impact the criminal docket more because at this point, each defense attorney has the opportunity to use her services if they need it. We would, if we were to continue to run 2 public defense attorney dockets, but with 1 interpreter day, we would have to stack all of those cases on 1 attorney's docket to only have her here once a month rather than twice.
So how much again was the interpreter?
We reduced it down to 6,300 from 9,500.
Okay, put
So
that on,
32.
put that on.
Interpreter.
Sorry.
Is that $2,300 difference? Is that what? 2,200? 3,200.
See, personal experience of having to be an interpreter for
2,200.
22. A lot to do with that, so I know how
Well,
valuable.
you can donate your services, Daniel.
Yeah, we have to be like.
Take one for the
It's
team.
yeah, you gotta be certified. It's a big deal.
Just go out there and
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just translate however I want to translate.
All right. Sheesh.
Yeah.
What he really meant to say was.
I would do too much interpreting in the.
It was 32, I thought so,
32.
okay.
But I do have to do that a lot personally, because I'm bilingual, and I understand it's very important that people understand what they're getting into. As just a side note, I had a case a few years back where somebody had been criminally convicted of tax fraud, a criminal conviction, and did not know it because poor interpretation. And the reason why I believe that she didn't know it is because why would she hire me to find out what happened if she already knew that she was criminally convicted? Because she didn't go to jail. It was like sign here and you won't go to jail, but it was actually.
Oh, no.
So I think that's a real horror story for my.
All right. We have,
So just as a clarification, in this particular fund, we're putting on the bubble a total of $25,250. Is that correct?
I believe you. I didn't add those three
I got
numbers.
23,450.
Hold on, let me get my
Bailiff
calculator.
back is 8,300.
Yep, and then there's a $13,750 difference in the public defender.
She said it was
Oh,
11.
yeah, it's 11,950. Right?
Well, if it's
Oh,
if
did I
it's
have that wrong?
106,
I have 13,850 for that change.
Okay, I went by the number she said.
The
13,
1042 is actually accurate based on Ms. Heil's new contract.
So not 106, was
Yeah.
wrong in the first place. Okay.
okay.
So 11.
Yeah.
So 11,950.
No phone. I wish I had brought my trusty calculator.
3,200 for the interpreter.
Yes.
So that's 23,450.
This, and then 8,300.
That's right, okay.
So we have to pull 23,450 from somewhere else.
Okay.
Okay. We have a big bubble talk next week.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Do what? The court's goal. The court's goal.
Oh, mention that? I don't have it in front of me. Do you have it?
Well, I have just one question on that. Why is the interest on collections dropping so much?
That's really variable. So the way our collections agency pays us is they cut us a check for everything they receive, and then we cut them a check back for half of the interest. So really, it's money we take in, but then we're paying them back a portion of it.
So it went down, but your budget.
Yeah, we budgeted 50, I think we budgeted it for this year 55, but I think we're sitting around probably closer to 50. And so we kept it about, where are we at? 55. What did you get down?
35.
Oh, you're saying,
Am I
what are you saying, 35?
Up in court interest
Oh, in
revenue.
revenue. Oh,
35,000.
Yeah, too many numbers, I guess.
35 from 48,
Over here, look, right here.
I don't have this part of it.
but then the projected is actually 30 that we're actually going to get, so.
I'm assuming you mean up here in the upper portion in the green box, it says.
Yeah.
It's probably because
48
we
to
ended up
30
about
to-
closer to here. We budgeted this, ended up closer to this for the year to date, so we brought it down to 35.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really variable, it's all over the place.
So people
So,
will have to be hounded a lot to pay their.
we have a pretty amazing collections agency, so we bring in quite a bit a month from them, yeah. Yeah, if we could just touch on, we do have a goal for the court. With our misdemeanor docket coming back, there is a large amount of community service that's ordered. And typically right now all that community service is being sent up to the county, and things are hours are being completed out of town, up in all over Clackamas County. Occasionally here in Canby, it gets ordered by the county to come back down here and do some community service. We would like, a few years ago, we did work with the Parks Department to bring the community service back into town and have those hours ordered into doing maintenance in our parks and cemeteries. We would like to work with Parks to bring that program back. With the staff that we have now, we think we can monitor it a little better than we did before. And it'd be nice to see those hours go back into the town directly. So.
I love it.
That would be excellent.
I paid off a few tickets in my year from community service.
All right, okay, anything
All right,
else?
anything else?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Planning.
So I will just say, well, he's coming down here. If we ever have to go through this exercise in the future where we have like an old to new, I would recommend the lines that are being reduced or whatever be like highlighted or something instead of flipping back and forth.
Yeah, color or something. Yeah.
If you had more than 10 hours to do it, I'm sure it would have been done.
That's actually a good idea.
Yes, Mayor Hanson, you have a question before we get started?
Scott, so to get to the 20%, what was the total dollar amount?
The total dollar amount to get to the 20%
Yes,
that
sir.
we needed to cut?
Yeah, across all the general fund
Yep.
departments,
like
what was that dollar amount?
670.
678?
678.
Thank you.
That, I mean, again, rounding. And that again is also built into the contracts that aren't settled for personnel at a 5% COLA. That's built into this as well.
Okay. Are we ready for planning?
We're ready for.
We are ready.
Good evening, Don Hardy. I'm going to combine the planning and building functions together since they really are integrated. And I wanted to frame this a bit on the front end. I'm going to frame this in light of the 2025 to 2027 City Council goals. And the reason for that, in light of the fact that several of these are multi-year projects, and we're in year 3 of many of these right now and moving them forward. I think this will give some context as to where we are. I also have some recommendations for our staff on implementation for revenue generation. Some of those we're actively working on, and some of those are being sought after regarding grants. So looking at the City Council adopted goals for 2025 to 2027, those relate to planning or adjust system development charges, complete the housing production strategy, complete the comprehensive plan and transportation system plan updates, parks opportunities in conjunction with the urban growth boundary expansion, complete urban growth boundary expansion process, and complete the development code update. The ones that are in process now are the adjusted system development charges targeted for the end of the year by December 2025. Complete the housing production strategy, also in process and also to be completed by December 2025. Complete the comprehensive plan and the transportation system plan, also in process and with the same date, December 2025. And the parks opportunities in conjunction with the urban growth boundary expansion, that would be completed as part of the urban growth boundary initiation and also as part of concept planning that we will be doing starting this summer. And then complete the urban growth boundary expansion process. That would be completed by summer of 2026. The only one that we haven't really started on is complete the development code update, and that's the one that we're targeting for reduction. And in light of the budget that we set aside, we are looking at completing the code update, doing a code audit year 1, and then year 2 completing the code update. So we'd like to reduce our budget from $160,000 for this multi-year project to $106,000 to do the code audit in fiscal year 25-26. That's a $53,910 reduction. The idea behind that we'd also be seeking grants from Department of Land Conservation and Development. I was on a webinar this morning. Ironically, timing was perfect. That is a grant application processes are opening up June 1st. And we'd be seeking for the code work part of this, which would be year 2 grants for that. They have about $3 million in Department of Land Conservation and Development grants. We've been very successful in getting grants for planning to date from DLCD. We've received $225,000 in our processes to date. In addition, there's some ongoing items for the concept planning. We'll need to do a wetland inventory, and there'll be more money set aside by DLCD later in the year. That'll be in the summer, and we'll be seeking a wetland inventory grant for that process. So just maybe jumping back, and I have a couple other revenue items that I was going to suggest that we have that we're targeting for revenue generation. The idea here is that we would like to be able to start the code update. I mean, that's at the discretion of the council, but we're trying to keep within the goals here, trying to get everything done and start it, at least, do the code audit. We'd be mirroring the process that Clackamas County went through. They're doing a code audit now, year 1, and they're doing the code update year 2. And so we're actually on the interview panel for that project, and they're going through that process now. So that's our suggestion for the reduction that would reduce the budget down to what we needed it to do. If there's any questions, I'll take those, and then I wanted to dive into the revenue elements a bit.
The reduction for the projects that you just listed out, it's coming out of professional and technical services?
Yes,
Is
it
that the
would.
line item? Okay.
Yeah, it was 350 before, now it's 296,
Right,
I believe. That's what it is, yeah.
Okay, my other question was related to revenue, but you will probably answer that, so I'll just let you present.
Yeah, sounds good. We very fortunate, again, on the grant side of things. This stuff is very expensive, this long-range planning stuff, but you don't do this except for every 10 to 20 years. This is a horizon here. The city's basically at a developable land or getting to that point. And so this is an opportunity to receive grants, and we are fortunate to receive the Oregon Department of Transportation TGM grant, Transportation Growth Management grant of $250,000, $250,000 for concept planning. We'll be starting that in July. There's a bit of skin in the game in this. This is not our ask financially to write a check, but they want 10.27% in labor, which is about 205 hours of our staff time, which we can clearly do with our current staff. That's something that will be ongoing for 1.5 years, but it is another $250,000 that the city would not have to spend to do the work. So that's continuing. That's parallel with the urban growth boundary expansion. We'll be receiving that grant probably sometime in July. That's number one. The system development charges piece of this, that's another piece I mentioned earlier. That's something we're working on to get adopted by the end of the year. I think that will increase our revenues as well. One more near-term item is a complete update of our permit fees, which you all will be seeing on June 4th during your process. We've done an internal study, and we've done an evaluation based on averages, and that's the state law says you can do it based on averages or you can do it based on actual cost. Actual cost requires more detailed study, so we've done it on averages. We looked at Molalla, Sandy, Oregon City, Wilsonville, and Gladstone, and there will be an increase across the board based on just those jurisdictions and averages. We're not in the ballpark, and so we will be more in the ballpark on costs. Some of our costs our permit fees are on target. Some of them are being adjusted, but I think that'll be another revenue source as well. And again, that'll be coming to council in a full package on June 4th. And then finally, on the urban growth boundary side of things, our economic opportunity analysis really identified a lack of employment land for future development. In the scale of about 440 acres. It's likely that we will be adding about 400 acres with the urban growth boundary expansion. That's a huge revenue source for the city long-term. System development charges, taxation, jobs. There's about 6,800 jobs that are anticipated with that over 20 years. So it's a pretty big revenue source for the city as a long-term. All these are just to mention that we'd like to continue the course, understanding that belt tightening is happening, but we're midstream on a lot of these processes. They do take a long time. This is taking less than some other jurisdictions that have taken. It is a lot to take on all at once, all these things simultaneously, but it actually has some benefit in the sense that we have been, I think, largely been able to get grants because we're doing this work all together. And so it overlaps, and that'll be something we'll continue to seek, which I think is a lesson reduction on the budget. With $250,000 for concept planning and the $225,000 we've already received from the state for this process, that's offset a lot of other costs, and we'll continue to look for those opportunities for grants. And the state is, so far has been able to fund those even with their own belt tightening. So if there's questions.
Yes. Council
Thank you.
President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, you kind of answered my question, I think. So building permits, fees are going up. Land use applications, fees are going up?
They are, and not to get too much in the weeds, this is a preview of what we're going to talk about on June 4, is we found that our building permit fees, ironically, are higher than the Clackamas County formula for building permit fees. The county does the building permit process. But in our investigation, our current fees, I'm not sure how this happened, but they were set quite high. And they are actually higher than the current Clackamas County fees. And so we're not dissimilar to Estacada and Happy Valley. They're doing the same thing, contracting through the county as well. So the option would be use the county formula, which actually be a lessened amount, or use the current fees that we currently have. So the building permit fees, we're going to recommend leaving those alone. The planning fees across the board, and you'll see that comparison when that all comes to you on where we're at in that process and what we've adjusted to make us consistent with the average.
The reason I ask is because the book we had last week compared to the book we have tonight, I was wondering what the decisions were made, because in the old book, the building permits were budgeted at $25,000, and now in the new version, it's 60. And the old version of the planning, it was 60K, and now it's 85. So I'm wondering what decision was made in the last 8 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I'm going to fully own this. We received a ton of money midstream from January was extremely slow. And then we finally got the actuals on what we had received for both land use permits and building permits. And the actuals for April are $66,361. And so I increased that because I believe we'll have a similar year to what we've had. And that is not even to the end of this year, fiscal year. So my bad, in some ways, we just got this information in May. And that's the actuals for April. So I increased that to match up with the projection. Okay. I think it's reasonable. And then similarly, on the land use side of things, we got a surge actually of permits, which was kind of weird, but it's 83,000 in April, 83,948. And so then I also said that's probably going to be similar to what we have in the end. And so I upped those as well. Scott kind of alluded to that earlier, I think, but it's not to do artificial adjustments. It's just, I realized like we are actually getting a lot more money. It was really quiet the first few months of the year. And then suddenly there was a complete peak of activity coming in. This does not reflect the increases, however, as well. So I don't know what that's going to be, but I'd say it's going to definitely be at that number, if not more, based on the fact that we'll be charging more permit fees as well.
And you expect the activity trend to continue?
I do. I don't think there's a reason to say it won't happen. I mean, there's some pent-up demand, especially for residential. There's always been employment. People are always like looking, they're not always developing, but that's always kind of been in the mainstream. There's a little less resilient, there's a little more resilience on industrial, on interest rates. Residential is, I think the interest rates will probably be, stabilized at some point, and we'll see more of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Counselor Waterman.
So from an aspect of development within Canby, it sounds like there's actually a little more positive outlook going into 2020.
I would say, I'd say it's the same. I'm not going to be over optimistic, but it feels like people were really stressed about like the incredible inflation that we were seeing, and I think that's stabilized a little bit. I don't know what the tariffs are going to do. I mean, no one really knows what those are going to do. I mean, that's a whole wild card at this point, but it feels a bit like there's not this frenzy on escalation at this point. I mean, it feels, and some of the builders have stockpiled lumber. That's where it's at. And so, I mean, they're looking for certain things to happen, but they're buying lumber in advance. Yeah.
And the fees that we're planning on increasing, the fees we're planning on increasing, we'll be starting to collect those?
July 1.
So actually, okay,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so was that incorporated into the increase in the funding as well?
It was not, and that would be, it's another bonus, it's really, really difficult to determine this, but let's say, for example, just a few observations. We will likely get annexations next year in the special area J area. Those are gonna go up about $2,300. I mean, so that's just one example, because that is within the average of the other jurisdictions. We were kind of surprised at what the other jurisdictions were charging. I mean, it's like and if it's in the average, we can charge that. And I think it's also consistent with our labor and how much things cost and what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So those increases will be in the master fee schedule that you see on June 18th.
Yes, Mayor Hudson.
Thank you. So, Dawn, there's been already some conversation of some items already on the bubble list. So if need be, what additional cuts can you make in your budget?
What I would say is on the code update, I would throw that out there, I mean, not to say that we're wanting to not do that, but I would say that, we would seek grants. In the worst case scenario, if there's zero funding, we would seek grants for that work. And so again, we're trying to match up with the council expectations we have a really full plate. We're trying to keep advancing this long-range work. It takes years to do this. But again, it doesn't happen except every 10 or 20 years in that process. And then you're set at that point. So I would just say that that would be something we'd throw out there. The more we dip into there's a kind of a diminishing return here on this. If we get to a point where we're probably less than 100,000 on the code audit, we probably should just say, well, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I've talked to a couple consulting firms. One of them gave me a quote, and that was about where I was at. So I think that was probably conservative. So it would take that work from consulting firms to help with that process. So I'd say that if we went below that, then that money would be freed up. I would like to make sure, though, that when we do the council goals, that we update that time frame. So we're not still on the time frame to get this done by 27, because it might take a bit longer. And obviously, we will, staff will look at other things that we can do, low-hanging fruit things that we can do. So it won't be like we aren't going to do any code updates. And we've done code updates. We've done several this last year. We did planned unit development revisions. We did cottage clusters revisions. Those were done. Those were completed. We likely would do other code elements, and we'd be collecting information for code updates. So if there was a desire, I'm just putting that out there, that if it goes below 100, that would probably free up more revenue for other things to happen. At the same time, if the council's directing us to say, no, we want you to stay on course, then that gives us a different direction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I added that to the list. What's in the miscellaneous revenue that jumped up to 75K?
this is under planning or?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, the last item on the revenue.
Oh, miscellaneous, oh yeah, I'm sorry, it is. So that was a grant, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott. Great question. That's a DLCD grant. It's it's part of that 225,000. We've been paid everything but that. And so that money will come in, and it's a bit weird to have track these grants. And so that's a line item there that actually we will get reimbursed for 75,000. I need to submit that by June 30th. And that's the deliverables related to our comprehensive plan work we're currently doing. And it includes things like what we're speaking about, how much park acreage we should have, et cetera. And we'll be providing that to them, and then we'll get a reimbursement check from DLCD.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you.
We will move into the police department now. Chief Tro.
I was hoping we'd get this in tonight. Thank you.
I think we'll get them all in tonight.
Yeah. Hello again. First of all, I told this to the mayor that we did not plan a drive-by shooting at Safeway parking lot today, just because I knew we were coming to the budget meeting.
I heard about that
But
today.
just to let you know, we did have, if you didn't know, we did have a drive-by shooting at Safeway. Nobody was hit, nobody was injured, and our investigators, detectives are actually working on the case now. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought that was pretty dramatic play for your budget.
Right, yeah, no. So a couple things. One, I know we're a large part of the general fund, obviously. Our original police budget that I'd submitted was really a status quo budget with a few increases just because of rising cost. So like everybody else said, we were asked to cut 12% of our M&S cost from an already lean budget, which for us amounts to $185,000. Staffing has been left intact. And again, just to remind you, staffing is 29 sworn officers and 6 non-sworn. With the sworn officers, that puts us still at 1.5 officers per 1,000, which is a very good measure for us. That's an Oregon average. And that's where we want to be. Once we get below that, it's tough to staff for our call load. Actually, calls went up 1,000 from last year. From 2023 to 2024, we had 1,000 more calls. Again, this is nothing new, but long-term goal is still to have a 3-officer minimum staffing and full-time supervision. And I think I mentioned this last year, but to make that happen, we need about 3 more officers to achieve this. And I realize that can't happen unless we have some money for that. A couple of things I just wanted to talk about revenue, because our revenue increased a little bit this year, and that's not tickets. We don't get that revenue, but I think our tickets are up a little bit, according to Jessica. So just a reminder, we have 2 school resource officers, and these costs are split 50-50 with the school district. It's worked out incredibly well, and even though they had budget cuts, they did not cut the school resource officers, and I really think it's because of the 2 officers that we have serving the schools. They do a tremendous job. So that brings in about $143,000 of reimbursement back to the city from the school district. The other thing is our behavioral health unit. We talked a little bit about it at council last night, but they go 25% of the time they go to the city of Molalla to serve, and we get a 30% cost reimbursement from the city of Molalla through a grant through Clackamas County. So that brings in some. Our traffic team continues to write for traffic safety grants, and we're anticipating about $165,000 in traffic safety grants coming into the city, and those are reimbursable overtime grants. So once officers work it, we request the funds back from the state. The other thing that I'll talk about a little bit later is you'll notice in the revenues is a TriMet reimbursement, but I'm going to talk about that position a little bit later. A couple additional cost increases over the last year. So our county dispatch fees, which is Clackamas County Dispatch, went up $31,000 from last year to this year. So that's a fixed cost that we cannot cut. Lake Oswego, the city of Lake Oswego does our after-hour warrant checks and entries of like stolen vehicles and stuff, and that increased $7,000 up from last year. C800 radio fees, that's our radios that we use. Fire uses them also, and that went up $8,000 this year. And then last year we bought new tasers, and that contract is a 5-year contract, and it's $10,000 more, so that raised our firearms line item. So now I'm going to talk about some proposed cuts of the 180 to get to the 185,000. Like everybody else, we have a lean budget, and this was not easy to do. Took some time to talk to my leadership team about it. So the first thing we're doing is actually cutting a vehicle. We originally proposed 2 patrol vehicles, which are about $80,000 each. So we are going to eliminate that, and that's an $80,000 reduction in that fund. We also had in our original budget 4 mobile data computers. Those are just replacement computers. All our vehicles, all our officers have mobile data computers, and we for the last probably 5 years, we've replaced, we buy 4 of them to replace older ones. So I'm going to cut 1 of them out, and that will come down to 3, so that'll save us about $5,000. The other thing is the council knows that we have a IT tech at our department 10 hours a week. For the last 2 years, we've had that because we have some unique programs and stuff that he knows, and he's also available for after hours and emergency calls. So I'm proposing to cut that position. That's a $50,000 reduction. We're going to rely on Polar to do that stuff. Yes.
So with the reduction of that position that you guys have, which has been coming out of your budget, how much is that going to translate into increased cost with Polar? Is it actual savings, or is it a 1-for-1?
It's, yeah, Polar, we are included in the Polar contract already, so it shouldn't be an increase in Polar unless something changes. Todd, am I right? You're correct. Yeah. So this was just an extra service that we've had since, actually, I think Paul was our IT person in-house. We hired Tyler right away. Oregon City has a similar, they also contract with Polar and contract with Tyler for the police stuff because it's so unique. It's just not regular.
Elimination of that position saves how much?
$50,000. And last year that came out of the IT budget, and I had put it in our budget to try to keep that position.
Okay. And Polar can handle the uniqueness that you're talking about.
We hope so. We'll see. I mean, we're going to find out. They don't have the expertise Tyler has in our certain stuff, but I'm hoping that they can learn it and available for after hour stuff. So we'll see. We had to get to a little bit more even with those reductions. So I just cut a little bit more from other line items to hit that 185 mark. There's some things I just do not want to touch. One is training, because I believe training is super important for our officers, but I did eliminate $2,000 from that for myself and not going to the International Chiefs of Police Conference that I usually go to. And then we eliminated some special events. We're eliminating funds for the Grill and Chill and the Bike Rodeo. That's about $6,000 that we use for that. And so we're going to eliminate that for this coming year. That's it about on cuts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the TriMet officer position. So as some of you may know, TriMet funds other departments to enforce laws on TriMet property, TriMet buses, and the trains, or what do they call them? The trains, light rail, right? And so Multnomah County is the one that, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office manages that program for TriMet. So they've done something a little bit different over the last couple of years where Multnomah County jurisdiction there, they have departments that are hired to patrol those areas. So the TriMet buildings, TriMet platforms, and that. And then they also have Washington County agencies do that for Washington County. Currently, they do not have anybody in Clackamas County doing that. And TriMet obviously comes in Clackamas County. So they are looking for a team of local jurisdictions in Clackamas County to do that. So one of the things they approached us, if we were interested in adding a TriMet officer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits, but I know right now there's some other jurisdictions are committed. Lake Oswego's committed, Milwaukee PD, Oregon City PD, and a few others are still considering it like us. So here's a couple benefits from it. So this adds an officer to our staff for no extra dollars. It actually brings in revenue to the city, and I'll explain that in a minute. It also gives another opportunity for our officers to learn new skills and do something different. And from my experience, we need to have opportunities for our officers or they will leave. Our last officer that left was Tyler Wood. He worked here 2 years and went to the city of Portland. And I asked him why, and he said, I love this place, but I need more opportunities. He's a young officer. 28 years ago, I left City of Canby to Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, not because I didn't like Canby. I was a young officer and I wanted more opportunities. Bigger departments give more opportunities. So one of the things is we try to give those opportunities to our officers so they don't leave. And this is another way to give an opportunity for an officer. If you're here 15 years, it gets a little boring doing patrol in a 5-mile square area, right? So opportunities are a big thing. So they get to learn, they get to do something different. The other thing, it builds partnerships with other jurisdictions. So these officers will work with actually other Clackamas County jurisdictions hand in hand. So like Oswego, Oregon City, and whoever else joins this team. The other thing, if we have somebody, they can use their expertise for issues on our transit, if something happens on our CAP buses. So the cool thing about this is TriMet actually reimburses full salary, benefits, loaded costs at 105% of the costs. So if an officer that we send is $200,000 loaded cost, they give us $210,000 in costs. So it's really because of the administration fees, that 5%. Any overtime they incur up there is actually reimbursed at 105%. So that's all paid for. They have an office by Clackamas Town Center where the officer would actually go. They supply cars, computers, that sort of stuff for the officers that are part of that. And then there's an extra of about $40,000 to $50,000 in revenue for the city, and let me explain that to you. So not only the 5%, right, is some, but when we open up a position, we have some minimum years that they have to be at to go to a specialty position. So if you take, for instance, a 5-year officer, and I'm just going to use some simple numbers, if they make $200,000, right, we get reimbursed that $200,000 plus the 5%, correct? The one that we would replace is a brand new officer, which is about $150,000. So that actually a revenue of about $50,000 coming into the city plus that 5%. So we actually bring in some money. This is a 3-year contract with stable funding from TriMet. They have never decreased funding for police. We can end the contract in 30 days. So if something happens where if 5 officers leave and we just can't, right, we can't do it anymore, we can bring them back with a 30-day notice. The other thing that's kind of nice about this, we can use our officer for emergency shift coverage. So if somebody calls in sick or something at the last minute, we can bring them back to the city with no penalty. We can't do that, for months, but for emergency services, we could do that. Or for a special event or something, if we need an officer for that. So then there's no penalty there. So I really think this is, it's a really win-win situation for our department. It pays for itself plus, and it gives our officers opportunity. So that is a big addition for on the revenue side. I think we put about $210,000, and then it's also in our expense side for a brand new officer, at a less cost. So that's where we're at with the TriMet position, and I will open up to questions now for anything. Yes.
Yes, Councilor Davis.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
So does that include benefits too?
Benefits, fully loaded.
Benefits
yes,
and perks.
105%. Yeah.
Okay.
PERS and everything.
Okay, that makes sense. I had a few questions. What's the cost increase for the dispatch cost. Why did that go up so much?
It just went across the board, dispatch fees, just the cost went up for dispatch fees, and it went across the board for all agencies.
Did they
$31,000.
add county administration fees to that?
There were some, and they reduced some of that. Yeah, but there is some in there.
Okay, because that's a fairly substantial increase.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Have you looked at other dispatch centers now that we are on 800 megahertz?
Actually, yes, myself and Oregon City, we actually looked at Lake Oswego to do it, and the cost would be more, especially upfront. Long-term, it may come down, but upfront, just because of the added cost of all of a sudden adding more dispatchers to Lake Oswego.
Okay. I would encourage you to continue to look at that.
Yeah.
Because we can't continue to receive that much of an increase every year.
Yeah, it's been for the last few years. as you
Yeah,
know.
it's been very, very expensive. And the 800 megahertz increase?
That was just, just basic services. There was nothing else really. The contract with Washington County to run it went up a little bit, so that went up, it went 8,000.
Okay.
7,000.
Then a question, I've always wondered this myself, but does each officer have their own vehicle?
No, we share vehicles. Some are assigned vehicles. So some of our specialty, like the K-9, they don't share vehicle detective zones because they're subject to call out. So officers will share, like the sergeant share a vehicle, and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any way of doing more of the share of vehicles to where we could cut back the?
That's what we would have to do for sure. We did this a few years back, if the mayor remembers, right? And short term, it's fine, right? It hits us a couple of years down the line when we have to get rid of some vehicles because they're too old, and then we have a little bit of a shortage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the last time we did that, it came back either 2 years
Yeah,
later.
getting about 2 to 3 years later.
Where we then went from having to replace 2 to replacing 4.
Yes.
Yeah, so
That was rough.
that was rough.
Okay, because I'm looking at where we can still get some cost savings, obviously, for some of the other things that are on the bubble and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at that $80,000 for that additional vehicle.
Yeah, if we cut 2 vehicles, that would really put us in a hole in a couple of years, for sure.
Okay, that's all I have. Oh, I do have one other question. One of the other positions you have is a code enforcement position.
Correct.
What have been the benefits of that code enforcement position?
So we've always had a code enforcement position, right? 2 years ago, we added a full-time code enforcement position. Before, it was part-time with Carrie, who did some property and then half code enforcement. When it was just, when she did it 50% of the time, it was really just call-driven. So anything that she got, she went to. Where with Chris-Ann, it's a little bit more proactive. So not just call-driven. So she actually goes out there and looks for code violations and addresses those issues. So that's really the benefit.
Are there reports that show what she's doing for code enforcement?
Yeah, she has actually a program of the things that she has, yes.
Okay, that'd be helpful to see some of that.
Sure, yeah, she has a
You
program,
know.
she keeps track of it, that's where she keeps her reports and her letters that she sends out and that sort of stuff.
Because it'd be nice to know how we can joint share that with other departments within the city as well.
Yeah.
Other than just the police
But
department.
she does some building and code a little bit also, she works with that.
Yeah, sorry. Daniel first.
I think Daniel, Counselor Stearns.
So can you tell us again what the cost on the bike rodeo and the chill and grill?
Altogether about $6,000 with some overtime and materials and services that we use for that.
Can we just put that on the bubble a little bit, I think? It's a small cost and a large benefit item. Because I think there's a huge benefit for the community to be comfortable with the police officers and be able to, and for police officers to be comfortable with the community, because there's some big benefits to that, and maybe outsized of the actual costs.
Yeah, the Grill and Chill's been a great event. We added that about 3 years ago, and it's been fantastic. One thing about just that, just putting things on the bubble, everybody, I mean, I would not be in support of it if it's cutting to someone else's fund that's already lean. Everybody's funds are lean, you heard it, right? And so if it comes from somewhere else, great, but if it's coming from somebody else's general fund line item, I would not be in support of that.
Okay, I wrote it down.
Okay. All right. Counselor Waterman, you had a question.
Yes.
On the capital outlay, it should.
Yes.
There shows nothing now for police canine?
Yeah, so we put that last year when we bought the canine, and now since we have the dog, yeah, we don't have to buy it. Yep.
Just vet bills.
Just vet bills, yes. And we actually did increase a little bit in that line item, just in case.
Yeah.
So.
No more eating socks.
And for some boarding costs, but.
Counselor Patton, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to echo Counselor Stearns. I was going to request that the money for those, at least one of the events, but that if it's possible to do two. I think it is also important that the citizens interact with the police on a regular basis and non-threatening.
Yeah, non-threatening.
Yeah.
So,
And we're still involved with, other city events and stuff. Those are two that we put on and that we pay for. So we do have some support from some donations for those. So, yeah.
How are other events impacted?
With this budget, no other event is impacted. So if we do the light up the night, we're still gonna be there for those. Those are all in there. Yes.
Yes, Counselor President.
Thank you.
Hensley.
The Grill and Chill is a partnership with the Canby Center last year. Is it going to continue to be that if it were to be funded?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they are all on board. It was a
When they
great
did
turnout
the-
for them, and they would like to do that again.
Because that's when they did the backpack.
They did the
thing.
backpacks, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll definitely, I wrote it down on the bubble, but backtracking a few questions ago to the code enforcement.
Yeah.
I hear that you say that, she's doing a lot and, but citizen feedback, they're not seeing it. So maybe in your Facebook posts and things, they can kind of report on things that she's taking care of because it's not the public perception that that's a beneficial position.
Okay, yeah, and we can do some of that for sure. to
Yeah,
let
and
people know what she's doing.
the Cub box on Third and Cedar still got tagged and you guys drive by it every day. It's been tagged for a year and a half.
Notified, but I'll find out on that, yes.
So, but yeah, just maybe to help the public perception of it being a beneficial position, because I do hear a lot of citizens going, what's
And if
happening?
they have a complaint, please send them to me and I'll.
Absolutely, okay.
So.
All right, anything else?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Judge.
Next is Parks and Cemetery. Parks and Cemetery, and I'll call Spencer back up.
Page 72. We're going back in time. There we go.
So for the Parks Department, out of our materials and services, we have cut around $51,000. The first line item that was cut was the contract services. We reduced that down from the original proposed 30 down to about 19. That was increased due to a lot of tree issues in some of the parks with one of our bucket trucks being down, not being able to go out and trim those trees. So we've reduced that one in particular down. Next one was the parks grounds maintenance.
Sorry, by how much?
That one was by 11,000. The next one that we reduced was the parks grounds maintenance. We reduced that by 7,000, and that was the majority for fertilizer for the grass areas. Fertilizer has gone up. I think he had said that it was around $7,000 that he was planning on spending this year. So that one,
It's not going to get any cheaper if the tariffs go into place.
can't get us a smoking deal on it?
No, I don't sell fertilizer.
Okay. But you know somebody.
If a pallet falls off a truck somewhere, I will let you know.
Okay.
Just get some cattle to bring.
Just get a cow.
The next one is the streetscape landscaping. We reduced that by 15,000, and that majority is coming from light the night events for First Avenue and Second Avenue. So the park will still have lights, but there will be no additional lights in the downtown.
So meaning was there last year will not be there this next year?
Yes.
The park will be lit though. Okay.
The park
It's
is
the trees along, okay.
everything on First Avenue on the business side, and then the Sequoias. Surprisingly enough, he spends a fair amount on stringing new lights
Oh, I'm sure it
every
takes a
year
lot of
with how
time.
those are growing, so.
Yeah.
We also
That was
removed
a cut of.
15,000. We removed the Canby Kids grant of 8,000. The internal charges to facilities was reduced by removing those capital projects by about 7,000. And then we brought down supplies and services by 3,000. And then also, as mentioned earlier, the vacant parks position that we were holding for the addition of Auburn Farms, that probably won't be complete until, I'm thinking, next spring. So that position has been taken out of this budget. And then for capital outlay, we do still have the Auburn's Park development in there, as well as the Maple Park, finishing up the Maple Park renovations, which is new playground equipment and expanding the parking lot. Those were, although they were currently in this year's budget, they weren't funded by SDCs. Whereas if they get added to the SDC methodology list, then they could become SDC eligible. So I believe Eileen asked us to wait until the next budget cycle to actually start those projects when they're SDC eligible and try to not eat up the general funds. And then the only other project is the off-leash dog park. That probably won't be completed in one physical year, so this would just be the first half of it, and it's proposed to go onto the property that the city currently owns there at the intersection of Walnut and First. So when the industrial road goes through, there'll be a off-leash dog park there.
Yes, Counselor Davis?
Let's start with the position that was reduced. Are you in agreement with cutting that position?
Currently off of the master plan, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the master plan says that the Parks Department is down 2 full-time positions.
Correct.
So with that one being a unfilled position, I think to help the general fund out for this particular year, I think that would be where the most beneficial cuts come from, with it being an unfilled position.
Okay, because I know that we're short positions in the Parks Department now, and you guys are doing the very best you can to stay up on the maintenance on the existing parks. We are going to be breaking ground on the Dodds Farm Park, hopefully this August or very soon, as soon as you can let the contracts, which means potentially that could be done sooner than what you're anticipating. And so we're going to add yet another park to your guys' staffing, and so I'm concerned about cutting that position out and moving it over to wastewater at this point. So I do have some strong reservations about cutting that position because parks are very, very important to the community of Canby, and for, we are falling farther and farther behind in regards to maintenance positions for the parks.
I wouldn't disagree that more help is always needed in the parks. I know that talking with the crew, the last few years, the parks get used a lot heavier. I know before when they were out doing their rounds and everything, they could plan on cleaning the bathrooms. They would check them daily, but a full cleaning and restocking was 2 to 3 times a week, whereas now it's almost every day they're having to go through, and sometimes twice a day if they get phone calls.
Right. Okay. And then in regards to the revenue, I know that we have the park maintenance fee and we're looking at the park maintenance fee. But again, I think it's very important for the council to set the policy in regards to how that park maintenance fee is charged. In other words, that because that is not a tax, that is something that's a surcharge that's been put on all the utility bills. And I was here when that was created, and my understanding for that was it was to be used for maintenance at the parks in regards to whether it's overlays, those type of things. And we still don't know exactly how that money is being spent. And I know that the Parks and Rec Committee are very concerned and want that information. So I would ask that that be put on a council agenda very soon so that we can set a policy on how those fees are spent. Because that's going to come up for renewal very soon again. And the citizens are going to want to know how those funds are being spent in our parks.
Are you wanting that parks position on the bubble, Jen? Do you want it on the list or no?
Put what on the?
He was talking about the parks position. I was asking if he wanted me to write it on the list.
No, I mean,
Okay.
we're dealing with cuts.
Okay.
And all areas have to have the cuts. I'm just serious reservations about cutting that position and the citizens understanding the impacts to the Parks Department and maintenance to our parks. Because Dodd's Farm is going to happen, and that's going to need maintenance.
Yes.
As well as Legacy and all the other parks. And Maple Street, you guys have done such a great job with Maple Street, and that's a premier park. But I would ask too that we do put on the bubble of doing the additional parking at Maple Street. We cannot, that's a safety issue. No matter how you look at it, that's a safety issue because we did a nice job doing Maple Street, but now people are parking on both sides of Maple Street during ball tournaments and stuff. And I urge people to go and look at that, but we've got kids running in and out of cars or cars pulling out of the parking lot. They can't see around the corner, and we're just asking for somebody to be hit either in the vehicle or by a pedestrian being hit there. And we've asked that be, it was in last year's budget. We had anticipated that work was going to be done in this year's budget. And it's been cut, and that's a safety issue. So I would ask that the parking itself be put onto the bubble and know what that cost would be to put the additional parking.
Okay.
It's in there. The parking lot is in there.
Yeah,
It's in there, $1 million.
Right.
No, in next year's budget.
Yeah.
In next year, yeah.
$1 million.
It was removed from this year and put in for next year.
It wasn't
Or it was
moved. It
yeah.
was just, we didn't move forward on the project. The funds were currently there. We didn't move forward with the project.
That's my point. It was supposed to be done in this year's budget.
Okay, well, we can't go back in time, but it's,
So we're going to actually get it done now without having to take it out of the general fund.
Yes, Mayor Hodson.
So, and to that point, we gave direction to Eileen and city staff after the mid-year budget review to start tightening the belt. And this was one of the things that got shelved, right? Was this particular project was moved in this fashion because we could pay for it out of general fund this year or SDCs out of, for next year. And along with that conversation was not adding, or the decision made by staff was to not bring on seasonal help this summer, and it's not in the budget for next summer. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Correct.
So those are, again, the choices that we had to make with the budget to do that. So I'd like to add as a bubble item, reducing the Canby off-leash dog park from 500,000 to 250.
where did the 500 come from? Was it just a stab in the dark, or did you already have some research done into that?
Those were the rough estimates from Kurt McLeod, who was doing the engineering for Walnut Street.
Okay.
Yes, Counselor Patton.
So I'm going to tell you, that dog park has been promised to these citizens for years.
Okay.
And if there is the ability to do it, we need to do it. Turfing Maple Street took priority. There's a number of other things that have taken priority. I also understand that part of that dog park project is a sewer dump, an RV sewer dump.
There were some plans for that, but none of those plans have been finalized. We're still waiting for the 30 days to expire for our engineer of record, which will be June 9th. So once June 9th hits, then we can start going full force on a lot of these preliminary engineering portions.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say now, I'm squeaking now. In another year, I'm gonna squeak more until eventually I'm dancing around on this table because I can see where this is going.
wanna
I've
see
watched
that.
it for years and I'm getting agitated about it.
It's in the budget.
So
It's in the budget.
I'm not saying eliminate it. When is Walnut Street projected to be completed? 26, 25, 26, or 26, 27? Or are you going to dash my dreams and make it 27, 28?
No.
Because I'll gladly switch things from the other guy to you.
No, right now, it's my honest opinion is
Please.
that next spring,
Next spring, like 26 spring?
yeah,
Or
So
27
25,
spring?
26.
26 spring.
Okay,
So 25, 26 budget.
that's when it'll be done.
If we can get these out, we're waiting. Well, phase one is currently out, and that is a shorter project. That one should only take a month or two. But if we can get the last of the comments back from the county and ODOT, then we are ready to go out to bid for the project. And as of right now, the timeline is about an 8-month project during the summer. So if it winter time, I could see it being May to possibly July, August of 26.
So Eileen just whispered to you, phase one. How many phases are in this project?
3. I'm optimistic.
You're killing me, Spencer.
I know.
Is 500,000 just for phase one or phase 1 and 2?
So this 500,000 the road would be its own project. This would just be developing the land that is left over from purchasing the green property there. And I also want to state too that this 500,000 is all SDC eligible. So reducing it to 250
It's on
It's just a matter of.
And it's on,
So it
it's
doesn't
on,
give us any relief from the general fund.
and it's on the 20-year plan.
Then never mind.
Take it off the bubble.
Got Jason all agitated for nothing.
No, it was entertainment for
It was
tonight, so,
entertaining.
You know, it was some levity to the conversation. All right, then I'll back
We were
off.
deliberate, we were deliberate in planning the SDCs to be able to match the projects that were happening in the general fund. So these were kind of the projects that when we sat down, we're like, what can we do to make sure SDCs are covering so we're not dipping into general fund dollars?
Perfect.
Counselor Starks.
Thanks, Spencer. Welcome.
So, it's getting late, but I figured I'd throw at least one, probably controversial thing, but it's similar to what I've kind of been talking about before. Is the idea of eliminating low-cost seasonal labor as a way of saving money, it still doesn't quite make sense in my mind as a long-term solution. I think having low-cost seasonal labor would probably save money over the long term over having higher cost labor full time around, because as any landscape business person knows, they are busier in the summer than they are in the winter. And it's quite common for these landscaping companies to have more help in the summer than they do in the winter. And so, although it's kind of nice to say, okay, we're eliminating this cost to save a dime, I'm just wondering, and maybe we can be more educated on this offline, about the long-term wisdom of eliminating lower cost seasonal labor. Unless for some reason I'm missing something and it's illegal to have low-cost seasonal labor or some silly government thing like that, that sometimes that happens, but I just, that is still trying to wrap my mind around, and I sort of mentioned that about the library the other day, but it's the same concept. It's still not, just, you know, the idea that we have lower cost labor and we're replacing lower cost labor with higher cost labor, or making higher cost labor to do lower cost labor jobs. So, and I don't know if that needs an answer tonight, but it's something I think that I'm still trying to understand how that is a long-term cost saving. I can see how it's a short-term cost saving way, but I can't see it as a long-term, and we need to have long-term solutions that, so we're not making everybody upset every single year when we get into this budget.
Do you want to put that on the bubble list?
Well, I don't know if, I guess we could, but I'm not sure how in the short term it would affect it positively. I'm thinking more of a long term.
It's more of a policy question for you.
Well, not policy, but is
It
it
is.
really saving money to do it this way? And I think that, at least I've done labor cost analysis enough in my life to know that often the case is the answer, no, you're not saving money by doing it that way.
First of all, you know, this is Jerry's budget, and this is what he proposed. But if you want to put it on the bubble list,
I'm sure what
the personnel costs would come from either another department or you cut into the strategic reserve.
Yeah, so it would be, I understand for budgeting purposes, it would be extra line item cost, but as a long-term plan on how to do business, I think it's a net cost increase or not a net cost decrease. And I don't know if I'm explaining myself well enough, the concept of allocation of low-cost labor to low-cost items and high-cost labor to high-cost items.
No, I get that. It just has to come from somewhere.
So I don't know if I want to put it on the bubble right now, but I think we need to put it as a serious question on how we plan out our overall costs for the city.
Certainly.
Councilor Patton?
So Spencer, how much does it cost to do the lights on the other streets, not just the park?
Ken told me that he typically is around the 8 to 10,000 by the time he's adding all the lights, because with leaving the lights up year round, typically they have to be replaced by that time. The trees get bigger, so needing more lights. And surprisingly, lights are not, you can't go to Dollar Tree and find lights that'll actually.
Actually survive in Oregon
Yeah.
winter.
I can't even
on the
go to
tree.
Home Depot and get a decent strand of lights.
So,
I guess the thing is like, I'm torn between, you know, we invest this money in like the ball fields and stuff, and I know that the $8,000 to Canby Kids goes a long way to their participation in utilizing those facilities. So, I guess
On the bubble?
I would like to see us add the Canby Kids to the bubble.
Done.
I was going to ask about that one too.
Okay.
I agree.
I wrote it down. And I also, was I getting that you wanted the lights on the bubble too?
I
or-
was torn between the two, but I think the $8,000 to Canby Kids is a much better investment in our community than the lights.
Okay, crossing off the lights, leaving Canby Kids. I will make this a nice, neat thing and email it to you, Teresa, so you have the bubble list. You don't want my good chicken scratching.
Yeah, I was hoping before we leave tonight that we could review the items that are on the bubble list. Katie's making a list too, and I just want to make sure your list and her list match.
Sounds good. And then I don't have to type it up. She's already typing. We only have 2 more funds, it looks like.
Yes.
Yay.
I don't know, but it's. almost
Anything else
9:30.
on parks?
Did we talk about cemetery? And yes,
So
Mayor Hudson.
the Canby Kids funds, what was that a grant? Was that a?
I believe that was a council directive for putting something in the budget for a grant for the Canby Kids.
Yeah. We actually lowered it from previous years.
Yeah, because I think they were utilizing, they were utilizing this $8,000, and then, if memory serves me correctly, they were then also applying for the other community grants, correct? To supplement even more, so, you know, I know that those are on the block as well, so if we could at least say off each one of those, that would be great.
Any other questions on parks? Cemetery?
So for the cemetery, we made a reduction of about $6,000. The ones that were hit were the grounds maintenance for 1,000, building maintenance for 1,000, and then tools and equipment for 4,000.
Any questions?
Grounds maintenance.
I'd just say that the parks, it's maintained by the parks team, correct?
Michael Nakano is the one that is out at the cemetery full-time. And then as needed, like this last week for Memorial Day, they had thrown, I think, a couple, 3 or 4 extra guys out there. And on occasion, when Michael's got everything down at the cemetery good, he'll go out and help the parks guys on something else. But for the most part, it is just him out there doing any customer service with grave sales or anything like that, as well as the grounds maintenance. But during certain times, like for the 4th of July, a week before the 4th of July, something like that, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Mother's Day, they'll throw a couple of extra guys out there.
I will say that over the last couple of years, there's been, since I think we've taken it truly over, I think that that's been dramatically improved out there. So, yeah, this will be a setback for sure.
It will be. But that was kind of the areas that we had to make it.
No, I understand.
Any other questions?
Do we want
Do
to,
we need to think?
do you want to
about
press on or?
It's-
We got
I
2
would
more
recommend that we
funds.
press on and then. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia.
We still have to meet next week, but we can just deal with the hashing out of the bubble list. These 2 funds usually don't take very long, historically.
Okay, tonight we'll be talking about our economic development budget. And much like the other departments who've spoken about general funds, we cut 12% of our budget. I know it was mentioned previously, but one of two of the items that we cut before the 12% were the community small grants and the business grants. Those were the community enhancement grants and business enhancement grants. We had expended some of that money already this year, but after the mid-year budget review and a conversation with the city administrator, we decided to halt on that until we had a better understanding of priorities of the council and the budget committee. So the 12% cuts did not include that. The 12% cuts, first and foremost, like many of the other departments, we cut professional development. We cut the development of a local brochure for marketing purposes. Our hope is that we can utilize some of the efforts that we're doing with tourism and expand those specifically online so that we can really make an impact with work that is already being done and used in the way that it is intended. And then with our events, we kind of carved into the events in ways that we could, that maybe the community wouldn't notice, but that allowed us to have a cost savings. Some of those contingencies for events were either reduced or removed. Those are in place so that the goods and services that come forward and rise in all of our different efforts throughout all the different ways that we go about our business, but we see that happen over time. We've done some pretty good planning, so I think that our budget is pretty solid, or at least we have a good understanding of what those costs will be in the future. And then, our commitment to continuing to fundraise to support our efforts with events. And then finally, with the promotion, the Shop Local Canby gift cards. So what that promotion was about getting people to shop locally. You spend $10, you get a punch, and you could get those throughout the holiday season. In a way to help boost our small businesses, the city purchased gift cards. And the business would match that money. And so we have reduced that match. And so we would be asking for local businesses to supply gift cards if they'd like to. That effort will not, if they don't want to or cannot supply a gift card or a gift certificate, it would not preclude them from participating in the Shop Local Canby campaign. Other than that, we really try to keep as much as possible the same. I know that there was conversations at the last budget committee meeting with urban renewal ending, and then last night it's at the city council meeting as well. And economic development, and especially good economic development, is something that is sometimes hard to track. It seems like we talk a lot about events and marketing, but it's a lot of those conversations and convening people and bringing together resources that happen behind the scenes that aren't as visible. And so, last night at the conversation about reserves, hearing, well, economic development could get cut, there are ways that would be seen, not just immediately or not just with staff, but also for time to come. You ramp economic development up, but economic development or revitalization isn't something that typically ends. And the work that we've done with the Urban Renewal District and also with the general fund in Canby, I think is work to be proud of, and really that we've used our funding, our resources, and our assets in ways that have made a really big impact. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
More of a comment. I just want to be clear, I'm not in favor of cutting economic development. There are some programs I'm not a fan of that I'm okay with letting those go. But I do see the value in the department, and I'm not a fan of cutting the department at all. I just wanted to be clear that if I said anything in previous meetings that made you think that, I apologize, because I never would have wanted to make you think that. Now, some of the small business grants, the community small grants, those were niceties, not necessities, so I'm okay with those going. For now, I mean, who knows what the future might hold? We don't have a crystal ball. But I do see the value in what the department does, so I value economic development.
Thank you.
Counselor Starnes.
I noticed that Independence Day is both a revenue and an expense. I assume the revenue comes from selling booths at the...
Booth space, parade entries. Parade entries are just for businesses. So if a business wants to enter the parade, or if somebody is running for election and campaigning during the parade, then there's a fee for that. There are fees for the car show. And then also we fundraise for that event as well.
So about $11,000 is what the fees are. Is there any thought of raising those fees as a way of offsetting some of the expenses of the Independence Day? I mean, I'm not sure what the market is or what the market can bear, but they sell some food for a lot, and so it might be able to afford a little bit of bigger contribution. I just might 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I do have the feeling, that's something that we can certainly look into. I have the feeling that our fees are pretty in line with how other places charge, but that is something that we can definitely look back into.
Are those booths all pretty much sold by now, or do they sell usually?
The incredible thing about the 4th of July is the amount of late minute participation that we received. So that day we've had people show up. For our food vendors, the price increases, starts at $125, and then I think it's $150 to $250, and then $500, and that $500 is after July 1st, I believe. And that was, we mirrored those fees similar to what General Canby Days had done, but I think that they charged something like $1,200 as of July, and we felt like that was not quite fair. But we've had food vendors participate, and the week of pay $500 fee, and it is obviously it's a risk to the business. The state has recently increased some of their I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but like fire protection and suppression as required for food businesses. And so that started in effect last year, but they will be really making sure that our food vendors are following that and having the appropriate fire suppression in like a truck, or even making sure everybody has the right kind of fire extinguishers, those kinds of things. And so I think in light of that, I know that small businesses are feeling the pinch, and I think it's smart to kind of keep our fees where they're at so that we are able to continue to provide the level of, I'm going to say service, but a level of fun maybe that people expect with the 4th of July, and not to increase when they might be hit a second time.
Okay, I was just thinking as a observation on those days, they have vendors seem to be pretty full. And so if there's a lot of interest, then that usually means there's an opportunity for increasing fees without a negative. Now, raising fees is always an art, sometimes more than a science, but when times are lean.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, Councilor Patton.
2 things with the fee thing. Is it the same fee regardless of whether they come in late or early, or is there a scale?
No, there's a scale, and it differs between food and then what we call arts and craft vendors, which is essentially any business and or nonprofit that is, and the nonprofit has to be selling something. So like when we took on the 4th of July, the Moms Club of Canby sold these like water balloon toys. And since they sold something, they had to pay the fee. But if the Moms Club of Canby just came to provide information, that is a free.
I guess I mean, it's like, so if you register if you pay for your booth.
Yeah, so for food, it ramps up.
And the closer you get to the event, they're paying more because they're showing up late.
Yes.
Okay.
And then also the arts and craft vendor registration fee, while different fees, that also ramps up, and we charge more for people coming from out of town versus in town.
Okay. The other thing I will just say is I remember because I was on the General Canby Day board for a very short period of time for whatever crazy reason.
Would you like to volunteer for the 4th?
Huh?
I said, would you like to volunteer for the 4th of July?
We'll see. There's maybe a stick for one more plate. But one of the things that they did, which was really kind of clever, was they sold the water, so they had exclusive rights to sell the water.
Yeah,
And
General Canby, they
sold
did that, yeah.
Carts, like
No vendor was allowed to sell water.
so much water. So I don't know, just something to think
Yeah,
about.
they had some very
Unique
unique,
ways of doing
great
things.
words. And so there were a couple of those kinds of things, and based on the feedback that we heard from businesses and nonprofits in Canby and people who came to help kind of when we were putting together that event for the city for the first year, we did not.
That was one
We
of
did
the
not,
things.
yeah, and also,
They didn't
you know,
favor that.
especially with a relatively small department, and please don't get me wrong, we get help from other departments, and we have great volunteers that come back time after time, but it seemed that might be something that we were creating a bigger task than the return on investment would
Yeah, I was
be
just
able to,
curious.
yeah.
Oh, and I didn't have my button on. Oh, well.
Okay, so yeah, because the event looks like it's a, you end up spending about
We only recover about a third of it.
twice as much as you
Yeah.
bring in. And
Hello.
market conditions, I think, could be favorable to,
So you're running that on the bubble?
I don't know. The thing is, right on the bubble is one thing, but if all the slots are sold already, then there's not really much you can do, at least. Because it's on the 4th of July, so you're included in next year's budget, right? So if we were budgeting an increase, it would have to go for the following year, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, I wrote it down, and that's something we can definitely revisit.
Off the bubble.
There's one last piece that's not 4th of July related that I just wanted to call out, and it's the Economic Development City Grant expended, that $30,000, which, you know, obviously we're talking about how we cut. That is the Certified Local Government Grant. It's something that the city, I think, an 18-month grant. So we have applied and been chosen to receive that money. And it is a matching grant. And so you'll see that there's $15,000 in the revenue item up at the top. And then also, just to make sure that we're being transparent, we budget for the entire cost of the grant, but some of that is, you know, staff time and those kinds of things that are being covered elsewhere. So that's that Certified Local Government Grant, which is our Heritage and Landmarks Commission, and the city has applied and received that since 2013.
Okay.
Oh, yes, Councilor Waterman.
Basically, the point is, since that's a match grant, we can't touch that. Is that what?
That it can't be further reduced,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Thank you all for your time.
And our final program is the non-allocated section of the budget of the general fund. And Madam Chair, it occurred to me that we did not take public comment last week. And so I think we should take public comment. I don't know if any on the public
If the public wants to comment?
Yeah. But I feel like we need to kind of check that box off, check that box off the list, so.
Okay. Is there any public comment? From our public, okay.
There's another opportunity next week.
Next week. I hope so. Okay, there's always email.
I gave you one.
Okay.
Hope you read it.
Okay, we got a few emails today. I read them anyway.
Scott.
So the last one that we're looking at is the not allocated fund. And again, this goes to items of revenue and items of expenses that cannot be directly associated with one of the other general funds. So it's kind of a potpourri type of fund. This is where we have all of our tax revenues are coming in, our franchise fees, our cigarette tax, liquor tax, our state revenue sharing, any of the other licensings that come in, miscellaneous revenues. None of those amounts changed from our projections. We also have the overhead that transfers in other sources. Those items, and again, those didn't change. So generally, the resources that are coming in are the same as what was originally presented. The expenses, however, have slightly changed in regards to the internal service charge from facilities. That was reduced a little bit. And then basically, the library has that reduction if that so chooses to stay. And then the final one was we reduced the operating contingency from 150 to 130. And the 130 is basically just a just-in-case type of fund. Those are the only things that wound up changing in the not allocated portion.
Okay.
It's not very exciting. Any questions?
Okay.
Now it's pretty basic.
Paul's got a question.
Oh, yes, Counselor Waterman.
Thank you. What's the difference between the general fund operating contingency and the reserve and fund ending fund balance reserve?
So the general fund operating contingency can be moved to cover over expenditures or something that was uncertain. The reserve is basically just sitting there as what exactly it's supposed to be as a reserve to carry forward.
That's how it can be used, but the purpose of it
What's the
sounds to me like
purpose
it's
of
the
it?
same.
No, for a contingency fund
Yeah,
versus
the reserve, the strategic reserve.
what, can you give me which was strategic reserve you're looking at?
The 20%.
The 20%?
Yeah. It's there for an emergency in the general fund.
Correct, but it's sitting at the ending fund balance side of things, which if you don't appropriate it, we can't touch it.
Right,
So
we
if
can
you
still
wanna
touch it, but I'm
appropriate-
saying that the money, either way, the money is being reserved for the same thing. Same
Correct.
purpose.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
correct.
what I'm trying to say.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
that we want to be able to appropriate a just in case.
Right.
So instead of doing the full amount, I think you generally wind up seeing just a contingency rather than a full amount of what was sitting in reserve to be used as an ending fund balance.
Okay.
It's easier to move around.
Just look, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easier to move around.
Okay.
Okay.
But, I'm sorry, but just in general practice, from looking at it, technically, the city has a reserve, additional $130,000 of a emergency reserve on
Yes.
top of that 20%.
That is correct.
Thank you.
So in other words, if this, we follow every line item of budget, we still could have an extra 150 without dipping into the 20% reserve.
So when they need batteries, we have a way to move some.
Well, I'm just saying that.
pens
So-
and pencils
so-
and-
Right.
So you could spend up to 150, or 130?
130, they
130, sorry.
reduced it.
Yeah, so 130, and still not touch the 20% reserve.
Right.
Right.
Generally, reserve is sitting as that unrestricted
Yeah.
fund, ending fund balance, which we cannot go and dip into because we didn't appropriate that, but we're appropriating a contingency to be able to dip into.
So in other
So we
words,
can't touch that.
and not saying that we will do it, but as a possibility that it's entitled to us, we could say instead of 130, we could say 100 and use that for some of the items on the bubble if we wanted to without changing the 20% imbalance.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear that it is a possibility, I'm not mistaken. Now, we don't have to possibility, we can say whatever we want, it's that possibility.
Okay. Do you want me to run down my bubble to Katie?
Yes.
Okay, Katie, but I have down as our bubble list to complete your bubble list. I have the library at 20K. Cemetery, there was a question of the cost of plots and the percentage of the perpetual, goes to the Perpetual Fund. We wanted to discuss the interest from the library loan to the cemetery. That discussion, I felt like there was a couple people that wanted to readdress that discussion. From courts, there were 3 items: bailiff service, public defender, and interpreter. I see you're nodding, okay. Code update, we wanted to discuss that or seek if grants instead of funding it. And then we have, the final items were the grill and chill and/or bike rodeo and the Canby Kids grant. Did I miss anything, colleagues?
The court thing, that was 23,400.
23,450 for all 3 items.
Yes, and then the planning, I can't remember what Don was saying about, like, if we
Here comes Don.
use that money from the code update. What was that?
No worries. I figured I would come back up at some point. Really kind of where we're at now in our suggestion, I mean, the reduction of the 53,910 takes us to 106,090 for our code update. My question for you all is, that's right at the cusp of where we probably need to be to do any kind of code audit. My thought here is, if this was deferred, we would obviously seek grants, but if it goes below 100, we might as well just take the whole thing, and it may be available for other things to be spent on. But that's a decision that, I mean, both the budget committee needs to make, and then also adjusting the goals so that next year, it's like, where are you at with the code update? I may or may not have, like, launched this, because whether we got a grant or not, if we have no other way to fund it, I mean, we'd seek those, but it might mean a year delay in this process. So, and the total amount that would be available for that would be 160,000.
It seems reasonable to me that if we're asking staff to make 12% cuts to reach our goal of 20% to 25% reserve, then it seems reasonable that the council needs to revisit the goals and maybe make adjustments as well.
Yeah. And that's totally your call on this. And I just want to put that out there, that we're just trying to follow whatever the directive is. And so that would just be a recognition. All the other things we would still be marching forward with, all of the other council goals and objectives we'd be marching forward with.
I mean, if we have to make a cut in our dreams too, then we have to make a cut in our dreams too.
Is that going on the bubble as well?
It's on the bubble.
Yeah, because I was looking at like where we could get revenue from, and what I had written down was 160,000 for that. Jim was flirting with $80,000 for a police car.
I think we already got that one nixed though, didn't we?
Well, I put it on here just
No,
in
it's
case.
on the bubble, okay.
And then, that's why I put it on here. And then
Katie, are you getting this? Okay.
the $15,000 in the increase in the turf from last year to this year.
Oh, okay, I missed that one, thank
Yeah,
you.
that was one I had written down as well, was moving this turf replacement fee fund to other general fund items. Is that the same thing you were talking about?
I'm talking about possibly looking at what was added this year, but not depleting it.
No, I wasn't talking about depleting it, but taking the amount that was going to be added.
Yeah, that's the 15, that's the $15,000.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Counselor Waterman.
So, are we saying that plan, that 100,000 for the code is currently in the budget?
So, and this is a great question. So, I mean, what it would mean is currently I'm at 296,090, And that presumes that there's 106,090 in the budget. So it'd be a subtraction of 296,090 from 106,090. That would be the reduction.
Okay, so
Because I can't take another 100, I've already taken 53 off of this, so I can't give 200 and whatever that is, yeah.
but that's
So,
already
yeah.
been taken out of
The
proposed budget, so
53,000
we're not gonna have that, if we don't do it, we're not gonna have that money to spend somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, 53,000's been taken out already, Paul, to your point. I mean, so that, but if we took all of the rest of it out, there'd be 106,090 left that would be, that could be
Okay.
taken out beyond what you're seeing in your budget sheets now.
Okay, so that 296 would go to 106.
Well, no, 296 minus 106,0, yeah, that would be, I can.
So we would have to adjust our goals.
So,
Yeah.
so we adjust the goals, we have another 106,000 to allocate other work.
Yeah, that's the
If we
basic,
should so choose to.
yeah. Good question, thank you. I was thinking that this was not clear, so I appreciate you raising that.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes, Counselor Davis.
I was going to throw one out there too. I know that a lot of the departments have also made cuts in their travel and training. And I, for one, am all for cutting the mayor and city council travel and training as well as our pay.
I guess put it on the bubble.
Okay.
What page is that on?
It's under the administrative.
Yeah.
Page 49.
Okay, is this a good time to, are there any more questions for Dawn? No. Okay.
So we have our parking lot list.
Yeah, will that come out to us in the form of, so we can noodle it a little bit before?
Yes.
No.
You can? Okay, perfect.
No, not at all.
So your next meeting is next Thursday, May 29th, and we will deliberate on all of these parking lot lists, and you will make final decisions, and we will have the motions to adopt the budget ready for you as well. We'll probably have to do some fast calculating to make sure that we have the right amount, so.
Okay.
Okay, all right, groovy.
Madam Chair, I move that we recess until May 29th.
I so agree.
Can you second, Shirley? I don't know if you can second. Sir, Paul Vince.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all.
We are recessed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Please no. All right.